when he closed, exactly. That's how it goes. All right.
Pretty much when I get to see you, have a discussion. Typically when him and I fight up there, that's why I like.
Yeah, it was a little nerve wracking. But it is easy to drive. Yeah.
Which was great. You just go to trial. Got down, so you know.
Well, she actually knew that I drove in the car with her. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, but I'm not actually.
Really?
Yeah.
We're gonna go to Houston. My brother, my younger brother, so all my siblings and parents are meeting for the choice. Yes.
Yeah, I know, your family did.
But anyway, so we're picked for a little more work and see what Houston is off. Break up that ring a little bit. It's a little long for the moment, I think. Okay, there you go. So your dream of
I got a lot of work, so
yeah.
just like this.
Yeah.
You haven't thought about it's gonna be a work vacation, maybe.
Absolutely. Alright. Oh, we're gonna have
Once I had you hold it across the room. I can see miles away, I just can't see in front of me anymore. I just shot you holding it over there.
How are you? Hi, Kelly. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Hi, good morning. Hi, how are you? Good. I don't know. Yes. I know, right? Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking I missed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I could still, but I missed that. Have you been every other night? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But it's like the joint art improv and theater. So it's a good fit. Well, actually,
Oh my God.
so you're into that.
Yeah. And it helps. No, it helps a ton.
Nice to see you. Oh my gosh, your holiday party was so nice. You guys all look so good. Oh, I wondered if it was like a way. Oh yeah, no. Yeah, that was so cute.
Great.
Yeah, yeah, AJ Joe.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, he comes home today. Yeah, he has his exams finish on Thursday, but his yeah. I'm going. Yeah. He just came home last night. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Wow, I feel like Oprah or somebody. This is exciting. We are going to get started. I think. Kate, can we close the door? Good morning, Suffield. We're welcome to Junior Parent College Day. This is our first time in this new space, so we're hoping it will just seem flawless to all of you, but deep down inside I was awake at 5:30 this morning, very scared out of my mind. So. My name is Ann Salvatelli. I'm the Director of College Counseling and Leadership here at Suffield, and this is my 16th year at Suffield, so I've been around the block a few times. But this is my first year of going through the process as a parent of a senior. So I've come to you today with a different perspective and some stories to share with you that you, as long as you promise not to tell my son, I think will be fun. We are going to introduce you to everybody in our staff first, but I wanted to share some thoughts. So we are live streaming this on the web as well, so think carefully about those questions, just kidding. Don't even think about it, but we wanted to be able to reach all of our parents. We're such a diverse student body, and we have parents all over the world and all over the country, obviously. So we are excited to be able to have this option today. We will also be taping it, so if you want to, watch it again sometime, you can. Today serves as a really important point in your child's life. They're starting the college process, and this is exciting and maybe a little bit terrifying at the same time. But it is also the first time where we're really asking them to take the lead on something. I'm pretty sure that most of you were in charge of their high school search in terms of helping them look for high schools and making choices. And maybe your son or daughter had a lot of opinions in that process, which is great, because that's a good warm-up for the college process. But I think you were probably more in charge. This is the time when we start to nudge them ever so slightly out of the nest, and it's painful. Guess I didn't move. And want them to take the lead. But it's hard letting go and letting them take the lead. And we're pretty sure they don't know at all what they're doing, and you don't want them to mess it up, right? So that's why we are all here today, college counselors and parents, to work together. We are working very closely with your children, and we will talk a lot about that today. But this is sort of the big kickoff for that. I will say that parenting through the college process and counseling through the college process are two totally different things. And this has probably been the greatest professional development for me. My staff is probably really tired of hearing me say that this year, but you get it in a whole different way. I thought I got it when I started going to parent conferences, and I was like, oh, I understand, you're worried about them being evaluated, you're worried how they're progressing, or how are they doing against the other kids? Yeah, that was worrisome. Then I thought I got it when they took the SSATs and you had to deal with standardized testing and, again, outside evaluators of your children. This is totally different, I get it. And you learn a lot about your child through this process, and hopefully it will be fun. It really can be fun if you let it. I wasn't exactly sure how to frame my thoughts. I've been kind of silently writing this talk in my head all year, thinking, wow, I'm going to have such an interesting perspective to share with everybody this year, but he is still very much in the midst of the process, and I have not fully processed it myself, and so we are still figuring it out. But then I read this blog post. Have any of you read Grown and Flown? It's a book, and it's also a blog. It's really fun. Their tagline is "Parenting Never Ends," which is true and depressing all at the same time, but just honest. And there was a great post recently about 8 pieces of college advice on the college application process. So I read this, and a lot of it resonated with me. And in fact, I was like, ooh, I resemble that remark. So there is a copy in your folders for you all, but I thought I would walk through some of the writer's advice and also tie in a little bit of my own experience and advice, both as a college counselor and a parent. So the first thing she talks about is there's no right or wrong way to approach college business, and that is very true. Although what I would say is you need to go. It is so important for them to get out there and walk some campuses. Right now, it's all just fantasy and fiction to them. They think they know what a college campus is like. We've brought them to college campuses. We will
take them again in February. We'll take them on some college visits. So we're trying to expose them to what campus life is like. But really, as a family, it's important for you to go and make some college visits as well. Now, is there one perfect way to do that? No. Some families visit 30, way too many. Others might just visit 1 or 2. You know, it really depends on your child, on your family, and what's helpful. But at least getting them to see a couple of different campuses really makes a big difference. Have them make the list of schools they want to visit. It would have been very easy for me as a college counselor to say, here, I've already crafted the perfect college list for you, and we are going to go see these schools. But I had to pretend I didn't know anything and said, maybe you should work with your college counselor and come up with some schools that we should visit. And I probably asked 27 times. And finally, we set up some visits for March, and off we went. And it was actually a lot of fun, but it wasn't exactly as I expected. At one visit, we drove all the way out to Rochester, just 5 hours from here. And it's a very boring drive, if anybody's ever done that. And he didn't feel like driving. Okay. So off we go, and we bring my mom along. She lives with us, so we thought, well, this would be kind of a little adventure. Grammy will come with us too. And off we go, we drive out to Rochester, and we have this great plan. We stay overnight, we stay in a hotel, obviously. We go out to dinner, blah, blah, blah. Next morning, we're up and early, and we're at Rochester Institute of Technology. He's very into computer science. We thought this is going to be great. He loved it. It was really fun. We really enjoyed our visit. Had some nice lunch. Then we're going to see University of Rochester in the afternoon. I mean, I have this organized. We got it all set, what we're going to do. We walk in. It's beautiful. I'd actually never been to University of Rochester. We got lucky. The director of admissions was giving our information session. It was everything I'd hoped to hear in an admission session. He was articulate. You felt like, oh, my kid could really flourish here. So interesting. They'll be really well taken care of, blah, blah, blah. We're about 5 minutes out from getting ready to go out and tour, and he looks over and goes, okay, let's go. I'm sorry, what? I'm just ready to go. I'm like, it's 5 hours home. And I took a deep breath, and I said, okay, let's go. I was tired too. So we got in the car, and I was like, okay, seriously? What was that all about? Like, I've heard that happening before, but I didn't, my own kid. And he said, well, Mom, I want to study computer science. And they didn't even have a PowerPoint presentation. Why would I go to a college that doesn't even have a PowerPoint presentation in their admissions office? I was like, okay, then, off we go. So we headed home, and then I felt bad because I didn't go on the tour, but that's all right. So, you know, that will happen. So you can't force it. And what you think is going to be right for your child and what they discover is right for them can be two totally different beasts altogether. So that was the piece about college visits. This is my other favorite point. Just because your kid is a foot dragger doesn't mean they aren't ready for college. And my colleagues have humored me all year and heard me worry and wring my hands about, I just think he's so young. I don't think he's ready to go to college. And worry. And sort of engaged in the process, sort of excited, but not really, not as excited as me, obviously. You know, so I think the thing to remember is that they are really young still. And also, they're not going for 2 more years, basically. It's almost 18, 20 months from now till they're actually going to college. So it's just this crazy United States that we live in that we start the process so early and we make them think about it early, but they're not actually going for quite some time. So a lot of growing up and changing. And their opinions about schools will change too. At least in my experience, that's what I've seen. They sort of figure out, you know, initially what they want. They're all going to want to go to California, by the way, right now. It's cold and miserable and terrible, but that's okay. The other point she says is keep your options open. How I interpret this one, and I think this is really important to remember, is that we are at a school where 100% of kids go on to 4-year colleges and universities, right? That we are on that path. That's why you're here. That's why you invested in Suffield. That makes sense. But I think the kids almost take it for granted in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to 4-year college. But when you look at the statistics, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says there are 3.3 million kids between the ages of 16 and 24 who potentially could be going to college, and only 40% of them are going on to 4-year colleges. Another large percentage are going on to two-year colleges, and a lot are going into the military or labor workforce and things like that. So it's important that we appreciate that as parents, but also sort of put it in the context for the kids that this is not only an incredible opportunity that you have in front of you, it is a choice, and there are other options. Sometimes when my foot draggers are just not engaging at all, I finally say to them, do you even want to go to college? And it's okay if you tell me no, just because I'm a college counselor, I can handle the truth. Like, I don't think it is for everybody all the time. And sometimes they just need to hear that to snap them into reality a little bit and be like, oh, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, you don't really act like you do. And so if I can help you get more excited about this, let me know. But I think as parents, it's helpful to remember that too. We just feel like we're so on this, like, everybody's going to college. Going to college is a really great privilege that we are affording our kids. The other point she has is do not pick a dream school. And this one is particularly interesting, and it's a really rough week in college admissions. I don't know if you've noticed, because your kids probably all have senior friends and things like that. But a lot of the binding early decision announcements are coming out. So whether dream schools are in or out is becoming sort of a reality, and you get caught up in the fever of it. And even my son said to me the other day, well, if my friends and I decided if we don't get into our dream schools, then we're all gonna live in an apartment and go to XYZ school, which was rude. But I was like, to that school. And I was like, okay, oh, I didn't know you had a dream school. What's your dream school? He's like, oh, I don't, but, so it's like part of their jargon that they think they do need one. So I think we can all make it easier on ourselves if we sort of, discourage sounds very negative, but downplay the idea that there's only one school out there for you. There are a lot of schools out there for you, and hopefully you will find 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 schools that would fulfill your dreams, not be your dream school. So I liked that she pointed that out a little bit. She says, number 5, you may not need a college advisor. Well, I disagree, and too bad, lucky for you, you're stuck with us anyway, so that's not happening. Her point was that there's a lot of information out there that you can access without having a college counselor. But you all have a great college counselor, and you're gonna have more information from us than you ever care to. And in fact, I would probably advise be careful of places like College Confidential and other things that are blogs and posts and parent forums where everybody writes in and thinks they know everything about everything, and people start to take it as truth when there's really not a lot of truth there. But anyway, today is the first day in really building our partnership with you and for you getting to use that. And a lot of people said to me, are you going to be your son's college advisor? And I was like, oh dear Lord, no. And he likes to joke and say, oh, I got 2 college counselors, but it's really important that there's a third party person involved with this. And I find that over time has been our greatest role, is not only sort of being this third party validation and sort of helping shepherd and communicate between parents and students, and also being a bit of a family therapist. I think that's important as well. We definitely help with that. But that's our greatest role, and I think is a big reason you hopefully chose Suffield, or you'll be happy with your Suffield choice. Her number 6, 18-year-olds do not have a passion. That is so true, and I wish colleges would stop asking them what their passion is, because they're making it up to answer an essay question, okay? They haven't even taken classes in anything that's really truly that fabulously interesting to them for the most part. Our seniors get to take some pretty cool electives and things like that, but not when they're starting the college search. They're doing the basics of what they're supposed to be doing. That, by the way, the colleges all require them to do. So the fact that they don't have a passion yet, aside from like maybe playing Fortnite or taking selfies, that is okay. They will develop some passion down the road. So don't feel stressed about that. Her other point is all about money, and again, this has become very personal for me as well. No matter what your college budget might be, I think it's really important to have a discussion with your child about the affordability of college and what it means to invest $75,000 to $80,000 a year in somebody's education. And perhaps you already have talked to them about that in context of their Suffield education. I say that number not to totally freak everybody out. There's a lot of ways to not pay that amount of money, certainly financial aid, merit money. There's schools that charge a lot less, and it's not necessarily just public versus private and things like that. But definitely having a conversation about money, as the kids would say, it's kind of cringy. I didn't really like telling him some of our personal finance situations, but I also wanted him to appreciate that we were investing a lot of money into what was going to be his college education, so that he should take that seriously. And just whether the college has good food or nice dorms is probably not the only reason. Fine if that's, you know, on your list, but it's not the only reason to pick a place. The last one I'm going to share a couple of bloopers with you of mistakes that I made, to both personalize and hopefully add humor to the morning. On college visits, I already told you a little bit about our college visit scenario. I don't know, if you know me, I'm very sort of effusive and, you know, bubbly and energetic, and obviously I've been to a lot of conferences and know a lot of people that work in admissions. So mistake number one that I made was at 2 different colleges, I went right up and hugged the dean of admission because I was so happy to see them. He's not applying to those schools, and I don't think that's probably a coincidence. Testing, I was a mess about testing, Kate can tell you. Testing, I think I know how to advise kids on which tests to take when, and don't test too much, and try to keep it all in perspective. In the end, he took way too many tests. It was a lot. He wanted to, and I learned that that was okay too, as long as the student was saying, but Mom, I want to try that test one more time. I think I can get better in this section, that section. But it wasn't me saying, you have to take it another time. And so you have to work together on what works for your kid. And I have criticized many families in the past for letting their kid take a test 6 times. And then there I was, writing the, you know, check, not really checks, we don't do that anymore, but giving the old credit card to College Board or ACT. So then this is the biggest mistake I made, so learn from me. So I was very anxious about this testing for a lot of different reasons. And I knew his results were coming out on a certain morning, and I was on a flight, and I just landed in Kentucky for a conference, and I decided I was going to look him up. So I logged into his account, so bad, and I saw that he did really well, and I was, first of all, ridiculously excited that he did well, because I know perfectly well that he would have a wonderful life, whether he got this score or not. And I preach that, and I believe it, and I know it, but there I was, caught in my own mess of being like, woo! And then I texted to him. So what did I do wrong? I should have let him look it up. I should have let him look it up. And even if I had not controlled myself and looked it up myself, I still should have let him look it up. But no, and I apologize, and he's very sweet, thank goodness, but you know, so even somebody who thinks she knows how to tell people to parent through the college process makes mistakes, and I share that with you to humble myself and also just to remind all of us that we have to keep ourselves in check a little bit too. Okay, I probably could come up with more, but we don't want to listen to my problems all day. The last one that she mentions is, once you get accepted, choose and pay, there's more fun to come. And that is very true. The college process is very ongoing. So once you actually know where they're going to college, it's not over. They're still figuring out who they're going to live with, where they're going to live, how they're going to travel back and forth, what about their courses, and hopefully they're making a lot of these decisions on their own. And there's a lot of letting go in the process. But I wanted to read you this quote that she wrote because I like this. As a parent, you need to realize your job of consultant, supporter, listener, advisor, and sometimes venting outlet is not over. And sometimes it doesn't work out. You try, they try, everyone tries, and it's not going to happen. There are many reasons why it may not work, too many to list here, and it's important to keep in mind that you all may need a plan B. There are 18-year-olds, and sometimes they need to be redirected, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anyone failed. It only means there is a fork in the road and it's time for a new path. And so I just wanted to plant that seed because as we think all this stress and anxiety is all about getting them into college. But as many of you who have college-age children know already, it's not over. There's still a lot of parenting to be done, and they will need you, and they will need to fail at times. And that's hard as parents to watch our kids fail. It's not what we want for them, but they will be stronger, more independent adults in the end if we do. So that's all my wisdom there. I will have to say that you're not in this alone. All of the college counselors who will introduce themselves in a minute are in this 110%. They are not in this because they are making mountains and mountains of money or because there's a lot of prestige to being a college counselor in a private school. They are here because they really care about the students. They are invested in their success. They want them to put their best foot forward and find the right fit or match for them. And so that's what we set out to do every day, and we love our jobs. We sincerely, every once in a while, one of us will say, I just love my job. Now, if we're saying that in December when all these decisions are rolling out, that means we really do love our jobs, because it's been kind of some sleepless nights. I thought we would end by doing one little exercise. I'm trying to learn to meditate. It's not going very well. I have monkey brain, but I thought one thing we could do to try to all start in the right place is if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes for a minute. If you don't want to close your eyes, that's fine. But just think about your child and see them excited about college choices. It doesn't have to be any particular college. Just see them excited. See them graduating from Suffield, out on Bell Hill. It's a beautiful day, orange ties, white dresses. How does that feel? What does it look like? Then fast forward, you're dropping them off at college. Probably a little sad or happy, depending on the day. And then they're coming home this time for the holidays, first time from college. And what do you hope and dream for them? What do you hope they will come home and say? I doubt it will be, I wish I'd gotten into a different college. I think what you'll hope and dream for them is that they're healthy, that they're happy, and they're exercising their independence in all the right ways. Thank you. The next thing we are going to do, thank you for humoring me, all my little memory lane things, is I'm going to have everybody in my office come up and introduce themselves so that you can meet all of the college counselors. So if you all four wouldn't mind coming out. You already met Marlene Russick, who really is the brains behind the operation. She was the wonderful woman who checked you in at the front desk, and she's the one that emails you all kinds of information constantly. So she has been at Suffield. This is her 26th year, even though she only looks like she's 36. She did start when she was 10, and she is a wealth of information. So please always feel free to use her as a first point of contact if you can't reach one of us. And I will just let you go with it, Kareem.
I guess I started in the wrong place. My name is Kareem Newland. I've been here 3 years now, Matt and I. And I live in Brody Hall with my wife and 2 kids. I coach wrestling and tennis. And the thing I love most about being here is actually living in the dorms, because you have the opportunity to really see the kids outside of school and sports, and you really get to know them on a whole different level. Even the day students, they'll pop by every once in a while to see them. And then not only that, I have like 12 babysitters for my boys, so I really enjoy being in the dorm.
Hi, I'm Matthew Fava. Like Kareem said, this is my 3rd year here working college counseling. I coach the boys varsity basketball team, the boys JV tennis team, the class advisor for the sophomores, and I live in Row Dorm, where I'm the dorm head for freshmen and sophomore boys. Yep. I live with my wife, Lindsay, who is the director of the library here, and our dog, Harper. My favorite thing about Suffield is being an advisor. I had 4 students to start, and now my advisory has grown to 8. And what I love about it is that I have to meet each student where they are. So there are a few students in my advisory who all they need is a hello as I pass them in the union, or a check-in with their mom when she is worried and they're not. But then there are others who I have had to mold their daily schedule and add in extra help sessions with teachers once a week, each teacher, so that they make sure that they're accountable for their work. And that varied experience of helping them where they are is what I love, and being able to be another set of eyes for you parents who are sending them away to boarding school, or even for the day students who have to drop them off in the morning and pick them up at night. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Tassoni. This is my 6th year at Suffield. I actually grew up in Suffield and am a class of 90 graduate from Suffield Academy. So kind of a lot of hats right now, certainly on the faculty side. I have also 2 daughters here, one who is a senior, so much like Anne, we have worked through this together. And then I also have a daughter who's a sophomore, so 2 kids here as well. I think one of the things I reflect back on even as a student here is one of the favorite things is going to chapel. And I think chapel always provides a couple different aspects. Being able to sit with your advisory group once a week and sort of have that check-in time is great. Also just the variety of different topics. Sometimes we have speakers come in, and then most notably with the senior speakers who have been in the last few years, I think it's great to sort of get a different sense of a student as they stand up there and share something that's really important to them. Ann and I are co-advisors for the freshman class this year, so it's kind of fun. We laugh sometimes about spending time with freshmen who are just getting started here and then working through the college process with seniors. So it's this whole range of different perspectives, but it is a lot of fun. So I do love my time here.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Bashoff. This is my 8th year here at Suffield. Time flies when you're having fun. I live in Academy House with sophomore boys with my husband and my 2 children. Ellie is 6 and Jackson is 4, and our dog Remy. I coach lacrosse in the spring, and my favorite part about Suffield is sit-down lunch. You probably hear differently from maybe your children, but I love it because I obviously live with some sophomore boys, but also mostly work with juniors and seniors, so I get to see everybody come through the lunch table, and it's just a nice way to meet new faces throughout the year and have, again, a touch point with people that are students and faculty that I don't get to see regularly. So welcome everyone, thanks for joining us.
Perfect, thank you. So we are gonna spend just a couple of minutes doing an overview of today, and then I think we'll jump right into the panel and we can do more of the, I talked too long, do more of the nuts and bolts during the scorecard. That's okay. All right, terrific, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I just wanted to start to talk about some of the topics that we'll share today. We'll begin with an overview of the timeline to the countdown to college, so sort of where we're starting now with your juniors and going all the way through the spring. We'll start to share some important aspects of the process and talk to you through sort of important pieces that will come along the way. We'll then move into hearing from our 4 college admission representatives. We have someone here today from Babson College, Boston College, Marist, and UC Davis, so a wide variety of different types of institutions, so it'll be nice to hear their perspective about the admissions process for each of their schools. Next, we'll share an introduction to the online database that we'll be using with your children, which is called SCORE. So if you have a child who is in college and has gone through the college process already, they probably use something called Naviance, and we are now moving into a new database called SCORE, which is fantastic, very user-friendly. It's much more intuitive and much more appealing to students at this age. So we're really excited about getting it started with them. Later in the program, you'll have the opportunity to meet in a small group with your child's college counselor. At this time, we'll review aspects of the college counseling handbook and other important details related during the beginning part of the process. After that small group meeting time, we'll come back into this room, we'll gather back as a whole group, and you'll hear from 5 students from the class of 2020. And so they'll each be able to share their unique perspective about where they are in the college process, what they were thinking about in the beginning of it. They'll talk a little bit about visits that they've done, and just different things that have really been important and influential in their process throughout. And they're all sort of in different places right now throughout the process. At the end of our time together, we'll come back and we'll have some time for you to ask any questions that you might have as well. We'll have a short little break for some lunch, and then at 12:30 we have the Barnum Financial Group will be here, so if you want to stay and hear some information about sort of how to fund this lovely college journey that we'll be on, they'll be here to answer a lot of questions, and they're really helpful to be thinking about that now rather than later. Okay, so we wanted to start with sharing some of our goals. So in our college counseling team, we have some goals that we feel very strongly about. And firstly, we're excited to partner with you in a highly professional, proactive, and hands-on counseling guidance throughout the college search. We're all really lucky to be here at Suffield, where we each work with 25 to 30 students. So the really in-depth individual attention that we can give to your children is amazing. I feel that at this point in December, with the seniors I'm working with, I feel like I know them so well. I go home and I'm, sharing stories, I'm thinking about them and really getting to know them as a person. So we feel very fortunate to work with a small number of students. This allows us really to have the individual time and to really get to know them and focus on what's important to them, not just sort of be spilling out different colleges that we just know of. Our second goal is to represent each student fairly, responsibly, identifying his or her uniqueness and potential. The beginning part, when we start to meet in January with our individual meetings, we spend a lot of time really just getting to know your child. We are not talking about college lists. We are not talking about any of that criteria that is important to them yet, that they think is important to them yet for school. We really want to know them as a person. And by spending the time on the forefront to know them as a person, as we start to build the list later on in the term, in the winter term, we have a better sense of what would make a good fit for them. So we really do spend a lot of time getting to know them personally. And lastly, we have a goal of establishing each student to find a match, fitting his or her ambitions and talents with a college's program, resources, and style. We really have a range of students at Suffield, and that is part of why we all love working here. We have students who are taking high-level AP and honors classes, and we have students who are highly successful taking the regular profile classes. Most of each individual class of students probably applies to over 300 different colleges and universities, and that's wonderful. They're all choosing what's best for them, and we really help guide them to choose what is best for them and to try to tune out what their friends are saying. It sometimes is hard, as Anne was saying earlier, to kind of get in that mindset of that dream school, or you're applying to this, I should maybe be applying to this. And we try to help them really think about what's best for them.
So I think we're gonna pause right there,
Okay,
Philly, and jump
perfect.
right to the panel,
Sounds
and then
great.
we'll come back and do the timeline later. Thank you.
No, I'm the shortest.
Can you hear me? Yes, good. Sorry. All right, so it's always great when you can get the information straight from the source, and we're excited to bring in some experts to share their perspectives and experiences. These 4 admissions representatives come from a great range of schools when you consider size, location, and environment. They also happen to be working at schools that are traditionally quite popular among Suffield students. So from Marist, we have Kent, Babson, we have Eric. From University of California at Irvine, we have Michelle. And from Boston College, we have Kelly. And I'll let them give you their full names and positions and tell you a little bit about your school, and then we'll go through a series of leading questions.
Good morning. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for the kind invitation. My name is Kent Reinhardt. I'm the Dean of Admission at Marist College, a liberal arts college about 2.5 hours from here, right on the banks of the Hudson River. We have about 5,000 students. Our main campus is in Poughkeepsie, New York. We also have a branch campus in Florence, Italy. That's for students who really want to get far away from their parents. And so we offer, as I said, a liberal arts curriculum with really a practical element, with a broad array of internships. We're nationally ranked among study abroad. We have Division I athletics. And we're a pretty selective place. Last year we admitted about 45% of the students who applied to college.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Bellavance. I am an Associate Director of Admission at Boston College. I've been there for 14 years, so kind of a long time, looking in the rearview mirror there. Boston College is about 9,000 undergraduate students, and we have 4 undergraduate divisions within the umbrella of the university. We have arts and sciences, business, education, and nursing. Despite our name, Boston College, we are not right in the city of Boston. We're about 6 miles west of downtown, so we have a very traditional self-enclosed residential campus. with everything that you would think of for that type of campus, but with all of the resources and opportunities of Boston very close by and accessible for our students. We are a Catholic and Jesuit institution, and some of the tenets of Jesuit education are educating men and women for others. There's a really large focus of service on our campus. There's a big focus on educating the whole person, so being thoughtful about not only what students are getting in the classroom, but also what opportunities exist for them outside of the classroom to continue and grow. There's a large focus on the liberal arts. The Jesuits believe that in order to truly be educated, you need to study across the disciplines. So at the heart of who we are a liberal arts institution. And we're really big on providing opportunities for students to grow and reflect and discern who they want to be, what they want to do. So there's a lot of guidance and research for our students in those personal endeavors.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Boston, and I'm an assistant director of admission at Babson College. And I actually work with all of the students at Suffield Academy. In terms of Babson College, we're probably about an hour 45 minutes from here in Wellesley, Massachusetts. We're a relatively smaller institution. We have around 2,300 undergrads. And what we really focus on is we're a business specialty school, providing a really global education for our students. And one thing that kind of really differentiates us as a business school is that we teach our students how do you think like an entrepreneur. I think if you've known Babson, that word entrepreneur comes up hand in hand with us. And it's not in the sense that every student has to come to Babson to start their own business. We teach students how do you think like an entrepreneur and how do you add that to different areas of business and different areas of the world to really impact society in positive ways. So that's something that we're really known for. We're also known for really having a global kind of education. 28% of our students are international, and we have students on our campus from 80 countries and 49 states. So that's something that's really we're proud of, is really having a well-rounded kind of global campus as well. So.
Good morning, my name is Michelle Burns and I'm the Regional Admissions Counselor for University of California, Irvine. That means that I'm actually based out here in Connecticut, so I didn't fly all the way out here last night, although I would have enjoyed that California weather right now. So I'm based in New Haven and I work with all of our students in New England. I'm currently the only regional recruiter in this area for the University of California system, so I am happy to answer questions broadly about our application process and everything for the UCs. We do share a lot of the same values within the UC system. So there are 9 undergraduate institutions for the University of California system. We all share an application, some common factors. We're all the research universities of the state of California as well, so research is a big component for all of our students. Irvine is located in Southern California. We're about an hour south of LA, and about an hour, 45 minutes, about an hour, hour and a half north of San Diego, just 10 minutes from Newport Beach. So it's a pretty great place to be. We saw, we were the second most applied to or third most applied to school in the country last year. So we are seeing a lot of students from all over, but we are about 18% out of state and international. I think there's a big misconception that it is so difficult to get in, so much harder if you're not from California, and really it's about the same for our in-state and our out-of-state students. But something we do is encourage students to apply broadly across the system as well if they're looking for a UC education, to expand a little beyond the Berkeley and the LA and think about some of those other really great institutions that have wonderful research opportunities, study abroad. We are Division I at UCI, and we also get to be a really cool mascot, which is the Anteaters.
Great, thank you guys. So I'd like to start with Kelly from BC and ask that you walk us briefly through the application review process at Boston College. Talk a bit about what the components are that you consider and what is their relative importance in the review process.
Sure. So Boston College is probably a little bit of an outlier in terms of our process and what people typically think of for how an office reviews multiple files. There's a lot of structures out there where offices will use a second read system, so a file goes through a first reader, then it goes to a second reader. There's many offices that will utilize a committee component where files are read, and then some of them are brought to a committee for a final decision, and we utilize neither of those. We have a single read process, meaning that the entire country and countries from across the world are split up between members of the staff. So I have a geographic territory that I read in the United States. And Suffield Academy is part of that. That's why I'm lucky enough to be here with all of you and all of my friends from the College Counseling Office today. And I'm the person responsible for reading those files from my territory. Through the process, I will go back to them multiple times, so even though they're being read by one person, we're touching upon that as we finalize our decisions. And the initial read that I do is the full holistic read, where I'm looking at everything and I make notes, and then as I go back and we're finalizing our decisions, I'll be using my notes to get to remember that file and make decisions as they work in the context of our office. In terms of looking at an actual application, one of the things that I always tell prospective and students and families about this process is that first and foremost, this is an academic competition. So the academic record is what carries the most weight in the review, and that's going to be a combination of the curriculum your son or daughter takes, the grades they've gotten in their academic courses, and for us, because we require standardized tests, the standardized test scores. The other pieces of the application are important. As important as the academic stuff is, it's not very personable. We don't really get a sense of what kind of person the student is when we look at their transcript. We don't really get a sense of what kind of classmate they may be on our campus or what kind of roommate they may be in our residence halls. We get that from the other pieces of the application, from their essays, from their recommendations, from their counselor, from their teachers. Their extracurricular list gives us a sense of how they've chosen to spend their time outside the classroom, gives us a sense of what talents and successes they may be bringing to add to our campus. So all of those pieces are important in the review, but at the end of the review, once we've looked at everything, it will be those academic pieces that carry the most weight as we discern where the student falls in our pool. Did I touch on everything?
That was great. If any of the other three have differences or heavier weights on different components, we'd love to hear that.
I just wanted to highlight one thing that's a little particular about Babson, and I agree with everything Kelly said in terms of kind of the holistic review process, and we do take a lot into account with academics really being that important kind of component, because that's going to really trigger kind of their success at Babson, and at any college is the academics. But at Babson, we like to see, a little buy-in in Babson. What I mean by that is, we're a very particular school. We're not, a school that's for engineers. We're not a school that's, for students that want to pursue medical. So we want to see, why Babson, why business, why entrepreneurship. So we like to see a little bit more. And we actually have a supplement part of the application where it's really at what moment led you to this application. So that's a little bit of a different kind of spin for the Babson. It's really that engagement piece. And it doesn't mean that every student has to visit us 10 times and every student has to write, glowing everything about Babson, but we want to kind of see, their desire to be there, but also their desire to do, things in entrepreneurship.
So probably one of the biggest takeaways for you all from today will be that we all do something a little bit different. So many times the answer is it depends, which can make this process frustrating, which is why we're all here too. So at the UCs, we do something a little different for both of those. We actually don't particularly want to see a student say, why UC Irvine, why UC San Diego. Part of the reason is we all share one application, and there are only certain schools within certain institutions that will ask for supplements. So if your student is applying for a dance major or an engineering major, say there might be specific components that they are required to submit in addition to the application, but that's pretty rare. None of the UCs take letters of recommendation either, except for Berkeley, which takes one. So for us, when we look at the application, that is the only thing that we look at. We don't take any supplements, we don't take any, can you look at this video that I made? We will have students put links into their answers sometimes, but that is reader to reader as to whether that is looked at as well. So we are a little bit different in that process. We do review holistically though, and we are definitely looking at those academic components, but we review on about 14 different components, and I think some of the questions touch on some of those later on too. But just to give you an idea, also if you follow the news, you'll see that there is a lawsuit right now with the state of California against the UCs and the Cal State systems. What I am telling students right now is I don't know how that will go. So for out-of-state students, they should continue to take the tests that they would. They should continue to take the writing section, which is required for admission into a UC school.
The only thing I want to add that is true at Marist and probably most colleges and universities in the country is that there is there are institutional priorities or initiatives that are happening behind the scenes that you may not necessarily be aware of. It could be, oh my gosh, we want more students from Connecticut, or we want more international students, or gosh, we don't have enough men, or we need more history students, or whatever it is. And so that will happen, and that's why sometimes admission decisions don't necessarily make sense from the people that are outside, that aren't aware of what those particular institutional priorities are. And quite frankly, it's very hard to get those from colleges or universities. We don't publish them, we don't publicize them, and sometimes it's just a simple fact of numbers. For example, if your son or daughter is a history major and the history major applications to my campus have doubled last year, then it's going to be quite a bit more difficult to get in as a history major. However, on the flip side, if the history applications have gone down and cut in half, then it actually might be easier to get in under it as a history major. So these nuances will happen throughout the year and through the years and across different institutions, and just understand that that is all kind of part of our decision-making process too, as we try to mold together a class. And often when students are not admitted to a school that they particularly are connected to, they sometimes feel like they don't like me. And the reality is that it's not that we don't like them, it's just that there's not enough rooms at the end. We have a limited pool that we can take, and we're always trying to put together, it's like a puzzle, putting a puzzle together.
Excellent, thank you. And I think Michelle's point is most pointed at the way that we run the program here at Suffield Academy. Is there are so many differences among the institutions, and that's why we always talk about finding the right fit, even in the way they review applications, let alone what happens when you get there. So thank you for making that point. I'm going to start with Kent from Marist this time, and again, if you guys have differences, please put them forward. So how does early decision play a role in your admission cycle? It's something that a lot of our students and families are very cognizant of. And how does it impact the rest of your applicant pool, if at all, knowing that there's some stuff going on with NACAC right now as well?
Yes, so early decision, just so we're all on the same page, a student who applies early decision is bound to attend that institution, provided that they are admitted and the financial piece works out. So students that apply early decision should only apply ED if they are absolutely positively sure that that particular school is their number one choice. How does it play a role in our admission cycle? You know, quite frankly, I would say broad-based at a lot of places. If you apply early decision, you may be giving yourself a little bit of an advantage, and that's the reality of college admissions these days. That being said, that is not a reason to apply early decision. You do not want to get yourself into a position, or your son or daughter in a position, where they're going to a school that they aren't particularly in love with. And so very often we hear students saying, I've got to apply early, I just got to figure out where. And that's not really the approach students should go. You know, I think that all too often students are focused on finding that first choice, and I would encourage them to find 6 first choices. And if your son or daughter has a couple schools they like, well then keep looking. Keep looking, because you do not want to put all your eggs in one basket. If after you find those 6 first choices, your son or daughter has identified one that's just a beacon of light, and you as a family, along with the college counseling staff, feel that early decision is the appropriate mix for that situation, then that can help you in some cases in terms of getting in. But that's an incremental boost. It's not a, you know, the students still have to have the academic chops to get into the place. And so as Kelly said earlier, this is an academic contest, and at places that are pretty selective, you have a segment of students that are pretty elite, and then you've got a lot of students that are on the bubble. And if your student's in the bubble, then maybe going early decision will get them into the admit pool. But if they're not academically in the game, then they're not going to get in whether they go early decision or regular decision or any decision, quite frankly. So there can be some benefits, but that's not the reason to apply that way.
Anyone have any?
Ditto.
Great. Okay, so we'll move down to Michelle from UC Irvine. Could you talk about how the intended academic major may or may not affect admissions? More competitive programs such as engineering or talent-based such as dance or music theater. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm sure this holds true at many schools, and it probably doesn't hold true at many schools too, but for us, and especially particularly at UC Irvine, we this year were very much admitting by major. So that changes how students would look at applying. It also changes our review process as well, quite frankly. So it'll be an interesting year, and I'm sure next year's group of people I would have something different to say. But for right now, some of the majors that we consistently see that are more competitive or have additional components that we look at are things like engineering, things like information and computer sciences. For us, our business administration program is incredibly competitive, nursing. So when students are applying for those programs, we're really looking for some additional things. We recommend submitting SAT to subject tests for those majors. We'll really look at what physics classes, what math classes are you taking, and understanding that the students that are applying in those majors they might be at the very, very top, and we're seeing some really talented students that we're not able to admit because so many people want to come and be an aerospace engineer. For us, something that can be difficult too is that even within something like engineering, we see aerospace and mechanical are currently, and biomedical are the most popular ones right now. So we tell students, if you really want to be an engineer, but you're not sure what you want to do, or you're really open to more than one thing, say biomedical and then put down material science engineering, which is apparently the one that engineers and parents tell their kids to go into. So think about that too. And the other thing that I'll tell a student is, if you are applying to UC Irvine to go to the dance program, and you have no interest if you don't get into the dance program and going, then don't put an alternate major. I understand that. I completely understand that. If you want to be an engineer, you need to have an engineering degree. If you're really open to that, you're like, maybe I want to be an engineer, I don't know, I still really love this school, then go ahead and put down an alternate major. So that's how we look at those things. And as for specialty talent-based majors, especially within the fine arts and creative writing and filmmaking, that's usually a faculty decision. So what happens in those cases is that we are looking at the academics. The student has to be academically admissible. But that may be something where, I'm sure counseling staff can say, yeah, we'll have parents coming in going, how did that kid get in when my kid had a higher GPA, or this, that, the other. There are so many more factors that go into it, and it might be, like you were saying, that they're applying for the history major, they're applying for something that they have a really specific talent to, and that's why they got in when we had to deny the perfect score student with the perfect GPA who was applying to engineering.
Just want to highlight quickly about Babson that when you're applying, Babson actually only has one program. So when you're applying to Babson, you're just applying to Babson College in our Bachelor's of Science, and technically it's in business, but it really is just a general Bachelor's of Science. So I feel like I'm always confusing students. I'm like, but what major am I applying into? We don't actually have majors. So I think, as Michelle was highlighting, it's important to find out when you're, applying to schools, finding out the different parameters for different programs. Because at Babson, we're looking for students obviously interested in business, but also there needs to be strong math prep, with their application. We recommend that every student has to have pre-calculus as their highest math, and most of our students, to be honest, are taking calculus or an AP statistics as their highest math. So that's something a little bit different about Babson, that we actually only have one program, which could actually change. We did just receive a donation from Arthur Blake, one of our alums, for a new school at Babson, which is going to be in entrepreneurial leadership. But we don't really know kind of the details of that, so it might change into 2 degree programs, but as of right now, we do have that one. So.
One of the things that I've been trying to do in my career as I do more and more of these types of programs is listen to the answers that we give on this panel and think about how that lands on your ears. And I think this is a perfect example of a question where it's really easy for us to sit here and talk about our institution, because I'm listening to Michelle talk about how they look at different majors, I'm listening to Eric talk about how they don't have majors, and then if you talk to me from BC, I'm gonna say, oh, we don't really care about your major, but we do admit by academic division, so if you're applying to business, it's gonna be a little bit more competitive. And by the time you hear all this, and then if Kent tells you how they do it at Marist, your head is spinning. And so I think my thing is not so much to tell you how we do it at BC, but to tell you the really good thing about this right here is that you have such great resources in your college counselors, because what we're talking about, they know. So it's good for you to know, like, okay, depending what my son or daughter is interested in, and depending on how the school looks at that, that could affect how they're viewed in their pool. But you don't have to remember that. For us, it's business, and for another school, it's this, because your college counselors will certainly advise you and your son and daughters on that. So it's good to just kind of know that, but you don't have to remember the specifics. So that's my little plug for how, if I'm hearing it, how it might land on your ears.
And that you can ask us too.
Yes.
You know, if they don't know, they will ask us.
Yes,
You know.
100%.
Sign her up for next year, Ann.
Yeah.
Okay, so Eric, you alluded to this earlier, so I'll start with you and Babson. And this is another hot button issue that our parents often have a lot of questions about. So can you address how demonstrated interest factors into the admission process, and what is enough? What is too much? How do you go about it? Please talk about that.
And I think demonstrated interest is a question that's asked a lot, especially in terms of kind of access, to certain institutions. And we're not expecting, at Babson that every student has the opportunity to visit our campus. We're not expecting every student to engage with us every day, as Matt was mentioning. What we're looking for in terms of engagement is the reason that we look at kind of this demonstrated interest piece is because we have 2,300 students. We really know everyone that joins our campus each year, and we have a really tight-knit community, so we want to make sure they're going to be a good member in our community, be pretty engaged. So we give them opportunities to touch base with us in a lot of different ways. Whether it's going to, meet with me when I come to Suffield, whether it's doing an alumni interview in their area, which we offer all over the world. So we have a lot of different ways that we really can have them engage with us, or even just touching base with us via email. And obviously we know that, some students maybe won't do that throughout the process, but just to, introduce themselves before. To be honest, I don't meet every student that I read in my particular areas, but, it is good to hear from a student before, I'm going to read their application just to kind of see their interest. And the reason that we look at it heavily is because of really that size of our campus and that engagement piece. And I know that, we do get some phone calls and we do get questions being, that they're saying, oh, we didn't have the opportunity to visit, but we really are interested. So that's really where, sometimes we do have to make difficult decisions earlier on, maybe to lead a student to see kind of more, with deferral decisions, say, and kind of see if a student can engage with us. So I feel like that each school is a little different in terms of their demonstrated interest requirements, but at Babson, we just like to see engagement overall.
Before we pass the mic to the next person, because you all handle it differently, I should have given more context to this, because some of you are at different points. So when we say demonstrated interest, some of the parents in the room are like, oh yeah, right. Others might not be. So demonstrated interest is your student engaging with a college prior to them deciding whether or not they are admitted. And some colleges weigh that heavily. Some colleges don't care at all. There's a very wide range of how much demonstrated interest matters. Some colleges have a program that tracks every single interaction with the college, every single email and link clicked, and how much time and where were you and what device were you on. And others just want your scores and GPA. So it's very different. So that's why we want to make sure that you guys talk a little bit about your institution. So Marist is going to be different than BC, is going to be different than Babson, is going to be different than Irvine.
Yeah, and one thing I want to highlight too, Babson's a pretty selective school, so demonstrated interest or just engaging with us can kind of really showcase more, especially when I'm trying to advocate for a student that they want to be here as well.
Any differences?
At BC, we don't use demonstrated interest in our decision-making process. And that's for different philosophical reasons. We do ask people to sign up when they're coming for campus, and I think sometimes that leaves the impression that we're tracking that. It's honestly just for space purposes, because if our space gets full, then we can't have any more people sign up. It's all very elementary. It all makes a lot of sense. And I will say that sometimes there are parts of our process where interest can come into play. That's usually when if we need to go to the wait list in May or June and we're taking students from the wait list. At that point in time, we want to take students who we know will come. And so then we encourage students to let us know of their interest. But we ask them to do it in in a way, again, that makes sense. Maybe not emailing me every single day. If you feel like something's too much, it probably is. Like, your instincts are usually right in life. And so when things start to feel like this is probably too much, then you should follow that instinct. It's a good barometer.
When I think about demonstrated interest, I think about the pressure that kids and families feel in this whole process. They feel like, gosh, this is another thing I gotta do. Like they're tracking, we're opening emails and clicking links. Well, we better get in there and start clicking some links. And so I would encourage you just to exhale and don't think about it as another to-do. Think about it in the perspective of how do we learn about the institutions that our son or daughter is interested in? How does my son or daughter learn about those schools? There's a lot of ways to do it. You could read our emails. You can call us. You certainly can visit. But if you feel like your son or daughter feels like, wow, I got all the information I need to know about BC or Babson or UC Irvine or Marist or wherever, then that's good. That's good. Because for us, for Marist, demonstrated interest in the context of what you're talking about, it does play a part. But we do it for the right reasons. Because what we found is that students that have demonstrated interest in the context of this definition have actually gotten to know our institution. They've gotten to know about our ethos. They understand our culture. And so when they come, they actually retain and graduate at a higher rate than the students that have not shown a lot of interest. And so that's really the biggest reason why we consider it, is because those students are successful at our institution, which is that's the goal for all of us. You want your son or daughter to graduate from wherever they go, and whoever we bring in, we want them to graduate. And so when you think about demonstrated interest, don't think, boy, should I send Kelly another email, or should we click 17 links, or should we go visit a 4th time? Do that if you feel like that helps your son or daughter to learn about that institution in an authentic and genuine way. If you approach demonstrated interest in that context and in that lens, your demonstrated interest will be fine. Your son or daughter will be healthy and knowledgeable, and your blood pressure will be much lower.
Great. Anything to add, Michelle, or move on?
No, I mean, we're very similar to kind of Boston College.
Right. Yeah, the UCs don't have as much demonstrated interest. So important to note, as a shameless plug, but also as a good transition, for those in the room who are worried about it, or those who are watching the live stream or watching the recording, all of your students are different in their ability to demonstrate their interest, right? The students who are living abroad can't make as many visits to New England schools as those that live in Suffield. And so it's important to know also that we bring in a lot of admissions representatives from a wide range of colleges in the fall of your students' senior year. Over 150 schools will be here to meet with them on campus, which is a unique privilege and opportunity that not a lot of high school students have, and that is a high level of demonstrated interest because it is a small group interaction with the human that will read their application. So keep that in mind. If you're worried about demonstrated interest, don't worry about it. We're gonna help you take care of that and help coach you on that. Along that vein, and similar to what Kelly mentioned earlier, could you please talk a little bit about the relationship you forge with us, with the college counselors, and the role of those relationships in the evaluation process?
Sure. As I said, I've been at BC for 14 years, and I've been reading Suffield Academy that whole time. And actually, for the 6 years prior to me being at BC, I worked at Suffolk University in downtown Boston. And I was lucky enough throughout my entire career to have the northern part of Connecticut. So when I made the transition from Suffolk to Boston to BC, I still kept a whole lot of school counselors that I already knew. And that's a really nice thing about this field. And one of the things that I love about visiting schools is when I walk into a school like this one and I hug the school counselors because I've known them for so long, and the students look like, what's going on here? Like, who is this lady? Because they don't really understand the profession, or why would they? And that's a really nice thing that happens in our profession. And so I've been working with the counselors here for a long time. And when you're able to forge that kind of relationship, it's like any kind of relationship in life. There's a comfort there, there's a known entity. When I get an email or a call from anyone on this staff, I like to think I'm very timely in how I respond to everybody, but for people that you know and care about, you sometimes are a little bit more conscientious about that, right? And so, if Matt calls me and has a question, I'm gonna call him right back and I'm gonna answer that. And so, when, like I said, your counselors know so much about our different institutions and so many more, but if your son or daughter's looking at a place that maybe they don't know as well, they're gonna pick up the phone and call. And we are all very responsive to our school counselors. I think that's really across the board in our profession. So not everyone has to have as long and deep of a relationship as I'm lucky enough to have, because that is a common courtesy, what we call across both sides of the desk. And we work with school counselors, different institutions, different colleges, and different high schools, and that's really across the board. So that relationship allows us to have very honest conversations. And there have been times where I have called one of these counselors here about a file that I'm reading to say, I'm a little bit worried about this fit, or I'm a little bit worried about this, tell me about how this student's doing. And they are able, because they know your students so well, to answer those questions for me, which then helps me as I'm finalizing decisions. So it's a really, really important part of this process.
One thing I just want to highlight is that the counselors here are going to advocate strongly for your son or daughter. But you do need to understand that just because they say, ooh, BC might be a stretch, or Marist might be a stretch, or Babson might be a stretch, it doesn't mean that they don't like your son or daughter. It means that they've seen other students apply to our institutions with similar type of academic background, and maybe the result was not what the student was hoping for. And so they're giving you a heads up of what they've seen historically and what might really happen. And so if they tell you that a school is a reach, it's not because they're not going to strongly advocate for your son or daughter. It doesn't mean that they don't support them. It just means that they've seen in the past that a lot of students with similar credentials, it hasn't ended as well as they had all hoped. So just take that in the context that they will always advocate for your son or daughter with us.
Anything additional? Okay, great, thank you. So we're gonna go, Kent, you can just hang on to the mic. Could you please describe the role of financial aid in the admissions process at your specific school? What forms are required? Does financial need affect the admissions process? Again, this is another question where the answer is very different at different institutions, and so that's why we do our best to paint the picture, but we want to give it to you straight from the source.
Great, thank you. Financial aid. So there are a segment of schools that will be what they call need blind, which means that they make admissions decision without any consideration of the family's financial ability to pay. And then there's likely a little bit larger segment of schools that are need aware, which that the family's ability to pay will play a part in some of the admission decisions. And then there are schools that meet full need, which means that when you apply for financial aid, you fill out the forms, whether you're an international student or a domestic student, depends on the form, depends on the school, etc. But at the end of the day, the form will say, hey, you should pay X. And if the cost of the school is Y, then the goal of financial aid is to make up that difference. And some schools will say, we're going to meet full need. But the vast majority of schools are not able to meet full need. They just don't have the resources to do that. So at a place like Marist, we are need aware, but we're need aware with only the last 5% of admits, perhaps. So 95% of our acceptances are going to be admitted without regard to the family's financial circumstances. But when we get onto the bubble, at the thin line right at the very end, we do consider the family's ability to pay in terms of admission. And the reason is quite frankly, we're not going to be able to meet full need, and our financial aid packages, the best students get the best financial aid packages, and students on the lower end of our admit pool are going to get the least generous financial aid packages. And we've just found that those students are not gonna be able to come if we don't fund them sufficiently. So we do consider finances for a small segment, and we only require the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. So any domestic folks who are applying to schools in the US are gonna need to fill out the FAFSA. But there's another form that BC covers.
So there is another form, it's called the CSS profile, and that's a form that's offered through the College Board. And that for students and families applying for financial aid from Boston College, in addition to the FAFSA, we do require the CSS profile. We are a school that is need blind, so like Kent said, we don't take into consideration a family's ability to pay or lack of ability to pay when we make a decision. And we are a school that meets 100% of a family's demonstrated need. And I think when I say all that, it sounds really wonderful and awesome, and for the most part, it sometimes is. But the reality is, using the CSS profile and using our own institutional methodology, we do take into consideration some other financial assets that maybe aren't accounted at other places, including like equity in a home. And so our financial aid analysis is pretty strict. And what that does sometimes is that the way that Boston College defines need for a family can often be very different than the way that family sees their need. And there have been times in my career where I have actually wished that we were more need aware, because the hardest conversations I ever have to have are with a family where we have offered them admission, but then the financial aid piece of it isn't working out. And I have had some very tough conversations, and to be very frank, there have been some I remember one mother in particular, she was crying on the phone, and I usually have a pretty strict policy where no one cries alone, so that was very hard for me because I sort of felt like it's probably not very professional for me to cry with her, even though that was kind of what I wanted to do. So those things can be somewhat challenging, especially because by the time you get to the admission stage of the process and you get those decisions, you probably just want this process to be over, and now the really more sometimes, talking about money can be the much more challenging part of this process, and that kind of comes at the end. So I think I really just talked about how bad BC financial aid is there, and I don't need to do that, but I'm hearing myself now. There certainly are some really great parts of our policies, but those can be some of the challenges.
So, in terms of Babson's financial aid policy, one thing general too, I think that it's good that this panel is happening now, is really to start early with this process, and not meaning filling out the FAFSA 2 years in advance, because you can't do that. They don't become available until December with the CSS profile, but seeing, the cost of institutions that your students are, looking at. Some of them can be super daunting. Babson's cost of attendance is super daunting. But seeing the types of resources available, hearing, does the school meet 100% of needs, seeing the scholarships available, stuff like that. So I think that you can start pretty early, and every school is required to have a net price calculator on their website, which is going to give you a pretty accurate estimation of what the cost of attendance would be for you, so that you can start pretty early before you apply. So if a student is, really dead set in a school, but then they see that the finances might not work, maybe you even not apply to that school because they don't want to be let down. And I think you can start that pretty early on. So Babson meets 100% of demonstrated need as well for our domestic students. And I think one thing too to think about is, I know we mentioned early decision a little bit earlier, and this is where, there is a financial commitment there. So this is where it's really nice to start early with this process to see if you do want to go ED to a certain school. You need to make sure it's going to work out financially. And I think that there are a lot of resources at a lot of institutions that you can start early to see what a cost would look like. So I wouldn't shy away from applying to a school because of the sticker price, but just making sure you find out from our financial aid office or from the admission staff what types of financial aid is available. Because some schools are super merit scholarship heavy. Schools like Babson, we don't actually really have that many merit scholarships, so most of our funding does go towards D-base. So just finding out the types of schools that you're applying to.
Well, Kelly, I will make you feel better on 2 points. So the financial aid at the UCs is, to be honest, pretty non-existent for out-of-state students. California does an excellent job of helping the students within the state. In 2016, I think it was, the California State Legislature voted that out-of-state students and international students could no longer receive state aid, which means that we can't offer any grant aids. If a student is Pell Grant eligible, they will still receive that. If If a student is Pell Grant eligible, the UCs are not a good choice if they are out of state unless they are coming in with full scholarships from somewhere else. So for students who are not Pell Grant eligible, what that leaves you with is the ability to have some loans. I very much discourage parents from doing Parent Plus loan, and I have sat and told a student, I don't think this is a good choice for you. I have tried to convince a student to not go to an institution I represented because financially it would really put them in a hole that their family, wasn't able to fill. So I'm pretty upfront about that, and we're very upfront about that if we can catch students on the front end to say the UCs are a great value. It's a great return on the investment if you have the funds to go in with that. Each UC will be a little different with the merit aid that they're able to offer for out-of-state students, and there's a lot of talk about how we can help those students. The out-of-state students have gone to the Board of Regents and said we don't like how things are working, and we do listen to our students. But again, our hands are a little tied with the funds from the state of California because of the California voters. So with that, each institution then will be a little bit different with how they offer merit aid. For like us this year, I think we'll have an application. Well, students can sign into their portal and submit an application before they actually receive their admissions decision. And then if they are admitted, we'll go ahead and review those for merit aid. It's still going to be a small amount. So I would say the most you would receive, I think Santa Cruz might go up to $10,000 a year. But otherwise you're looking at about a $65,000 for out-of-state students each year. And then as you said, talking to students about financial aid and everything, again, I've done that. I have almost cried on the other end of the phone. So really the goal is for students to not get to the point where they're admitted and then having the realization of what this funding is.
So what to do for each of you is to think seriously about your financial circumstances in your family. And if finances is going to play a part in the college decision, then you need to have that conversation and alert your son or daughter now. Because it's really, I think, cruel, unusual punishment for them not to think that it's going to be an impediment and then be admitted to all these schools and then they can't go to their first choice because they find out at the last minute that we can't afford it. So you don't have to get into details. You don't have to say, well, we can only afford X, or you just have to simply say, and I've got a 9th grader, and I've already had this conversation with my son. My wife calls me frugal, thrifty, whatever. But I've had this conversation with my son already, and I've just said that finances is going to play a part in determining where you're going to go off to college. We don't have a budget yet. He's in 9th grade. He's like still trying to figure out life. But he is, at least it's on his radar that just because he wants to go to the $75,000 school doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen, because we don't have the resources to do that. And so if you're in that same position as me, you should have a conversation with your son or daughter sooner rather than later.
So we'll have 2 returners to the panel. That's exactly the point that Anne made in her opening comments, right? It's important to have that conversation early, and you'll hear from some students later today who can talk a little bit about, can I apply ED or not? And I had a student who was going to and had to decide not to because financial aid was such an important piece of the process. So we will definitely help you through that and learning which schools consider it at what points in the process, but this gives you a sense of how they do it, and I appreciate Ken's point there. Skip ahead a bit in consideration of time to make sure that we get this question in before you guys have to leave. Please give our visitors some advice here regarding their role in their child's college search and application process. If you could each say something about that, that'd be great.
I guess I'm going first. This is probably helpful for students too, but I also think it's really helpful for parents to help your son or daughter if they get really stressed in this process. I always like to kind of boil this whole thing down to 3 questions. Where will a student apply? Where will a student get in? And where will a student enroll? And when you think about it in those 3 questions, I think it really helps you kind of attack the process and thinking about those 3 stages. Obviously, the middle question is the one that causes the most stress. Where will a student get in? That is the most stressful part of this process. But when you think about it in those 3 questions, you realize that the student has control over 2 of the 3 of them. And so I think, as students start to get really stressed about this, and maybe this is because I'm a control freak, and when I think about what I can control, I feel better, so maybe that's why I give this advice. But, help them remember, like, you get to decide where you're applying, and you get to decide where you enroll. Those are your decisions. The decision part of this process is very confusing for students because when you think about it, they put together the same application, they send it different places, and it yields very different results. And that's very confusing because you're the same person with the same academic record and the same accomplishments, but some places saying, hey, you're admitted, some places saying, hey, you're denied, another place saying, you're admitted and we love you so much, we're gonna give you money. Like, those are really confusing things. But it's all about the applicant pool at that school and that piece of it, as much as you want to know about it, we can share it with you, that piece is out of the control. So, help your son or daughter focus on what they can control, and that will help them get through this process. And if you hear them say something like, I'm not gonna get in anywhere, please tell them that you heard from a room of 4 admission experts that they're gonna get in great places and have great choices, because I hear students say that sometimes and it hurts my heart a little bit. So remind them that they're gonna have great choices.
I totally agree. And I think too, one thing just to mention, as if they go to you in times of stress for guidance, is that it all ends up working out in some way. And I know a denial right away might not seem like it's gonna work out, but that wasn't the right fit for whatever reason, and you're gonna find, or the student is gonna find a place that is gonna work out for them. And just kind of an advice too is that I love to hear from students throughout the process. So if your students are asking you to kind of reach out to us and kind of find out more information, if you can, try to push them to reach out to us directly from the student, because I think that shows a lot. And also too, because in college they're gonna have to advocate for themselves as well. So I love that part of the process, is hearing from students when I'm at their schools, on campus. So that's some advice I give, but just to show that support in every way possible, definitely.
I would say in part trying to hold back from putting one school above the other. And I'm sure that sounds really easy now, but when your student gets really excited about, like, this is my #1 school, this is my #1 school, and you go out and buy all the t-shirts and the posters and you've told everyone, this is where they're gonna go, this is where they're gonna go. Just try to treat all the schools that they're applying to with equal weight too, so that if either that school that they really loved and maybe they end up getting in, they might get to admitted student day and all of a sudden go, not for me. And so sometimes I've seen parents who this was really the parents' school that they really wanted the kid to go to, and I can tell this student doesn't want to go there. So making sure that you're supporting that way too, and then also if they don't get into that top school, that they don't feel like I've also disappointed not only myself but everybody else. And the other thing is, I would say, really encourage them to be kind to each other. Schools, the competition between the students as well, or devaluing a school that a student got into, that their friend got into, is really heartbreaking and doesn't, help those students feel good about themselves. So amongst yourselves, when you're talking to your students about schools, not saying like, oh, they're going to that state university, really trying to pull back from that, because their best friend might get into that, and then that's all in their head too.
I have 2 pieces of advice. One is, this is a student's journey. And so when you visit colleges, don't impede on that journey. Don't give them your opinion. Ask them theirs. Don't say, boy, I didn't like that place. Start with, what did you think? And just listen. Because I know, as a parent myself of a teenager, they don't talk very often. So take advantage and get them to talk and listen to what they want. Because at the end of the day, this is their choice and their experience, not yours. The second piece is I think about your approach to this process, which could be which really can be quite stressful. But take it back to when you found out you were going to have a child, and think about what you wanted for that child. Now, I don't know what you wanted, but when I found out I was having children, I said, all I want is my kid to be happy and healthy. That's all I want. I never said, and I really want them to get into Duke. I never said that. And so, as you go into this journey and you explore colleges, keep that same mantra. I want them to be happy and healthy, whether it be at the #1 ranked school or an unranked school. It doesn't matter where you go. It matters what they do when they're there. So find a place that they're going to thrive and succeed, grow, and you're going to be so happy no matter where they are, as long as they are happy and healthy. That's my recommendation.
That was so nice.
Great, so before we let these four wonderful representatives go, I know that there are hundreds of questions, but are there any specific questions you guys want to ask before they leave? Yeah.
You spoke a lot about majors and getting in. What if your kid has no clue what they want to do? It's great.
So the question is, for the live stream that might not be able to hear it, the question is, we talked about majors, we talked about how that can affect admissions. What if a child is truly undecided or, in mother's terms, has no clue?
So I'll start, I'm sorry. So at Marist, a third of our students come in undeclared. And out of the 2/3 know exactly what they want to do with the rest of their life, over half change their major in the first year. And so I think from your seat, it's certainly, in most places, it's okay to say, geez, we're not really sure. That's okay. That's not a negative. Gosh, you're 16 years old. I'm 49, I have no idea what I want to do with the rest of my life. So, like, why are we telling 16-year-olds they gotta figure it out right now? And so, if they don't know their major, that's okay. In fact, I try to talk to students more about not what do you want to do in terms of a major. I start talking to them about, like, what do you like to do? Oh, I like the sciences, or I want to work with kids, or I want to travel the world, or I don't want to be just stuck in an office. I want to be out and about, or whatever it is. And they'll eventually find their way when they get to the campuses. For practical advice, I would find out how easy it is to change majors at particular institutions. Is it an application process? You're admitted to all the programs? Like, how does it work at each individual school? And certainly if your son or daughter has a couple finalists in terms of things that they're interested in, then you want to focus on schools that have those finalists. But I think that it's okay if they aren't sure about their major right now.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So that's another thing that we will definitely help coach them on. I think from when I started till now, I definitely encourage them to consider going undecided more so than I did at the beginning because I thought they needed to know. And I think, as Kent alluded, there are some schools that we will make sure they know they have to apply into something, or they won't be able to do that as an option. So we will make sure that whatever their interest is remains an option, but we don't want to pigeonhole them into that if they're not sure. And take it a step further, there are actually some institutions where applying undecided might be an advantage. Not all of them, and we'll coach them on an individual basis, but it's certainly not a concern if they're undecided.
Sorry.
So I should probably clarify too, because I did say we admit by major. But that did not mean that a student shouldn't apply in undeclared. Because I love seeing undeclared students. A lot of times they have a variety of interests and they haven't settled on anything, and that's great. And they can probably focus on a variety of those interests too. So there are things like, sometimes students know they want to do engineering, so they should apply into that. But outside of that, it's really, really okay. So I should also clarify, even at schools that say admit by major, that's still an option.
Right. Undeclared is
a major.
I saw him here. Yeah.
Sure. This question was for Kelly. You said that you had a single read admission process. How many applications do you read, and how many do you yourself get and read and admit?
Sure. So the question was about how many applications do we get, how many applications do I read in the single read process that I talked about at the beginning. And So sorry, my answer is gonna be a little bit weird because this year, for the first time, we went to a binding early decision program. Previously, in my time at BC, we had an early action. So that change has really switched up our numbers, so I guess I don't really know what's happening this year. That's kind of how I feel about this whole year, I don't know what's happening. It probably doesn't bode well for me as a professional, but anyways, everything's just really different. So in previous years, in the course of early action and regular decision, I would probably read somewhere around 1,600 to 1,800 applications between the end of October and the beginning of March. And I will say that one of the questions that I find hard to talk about is like, how much time do you spend on an application? Because when you hear those numbers, you obviously know that that's a lot. And I will say that we on the admission profession learn to go through an application fast because we have to. It doesn't mean that we're not thoughtful, and it doesn't mean that we're not thorough. My husband is in the profession, and he used to do admissions a long time ago, and a couple years ago we got talking about how the application had changed and stuff. We have really interesting conversations in our home. And I said, hey, why don't you just read a couple applications? And it took him forever to read 4 because he doesn't know what the common application looks like, and it made me feel really fast and awesome. So we read a lot of applications, but we're able to get through it by just working really hard. Was that part of your question too?
Yeah,
Is how do you get through it? Yeah.
Well, and then there are metrics, very specific metrics that you guys have to kind of crunch.
There are specific metrics, and thankfully there's people who sit in larger seats than mine who look at, so what happens is that as we go through that process, after I read each file, at the end of it, I'm going to put an assessment on that file, and that assessment is where I'm kind of saying, hey, this is where this person's falling in our pool. So maybe when I get done reading it, they're falling at the very top of our pool, maybe they're kind of more in the middle, maybe they're at the bottom. And as we go through each cycle and we put those assessments into our system, then again, those smarter people who sit in larger seats than mine are able to look at that and do some of that crunching and kind of taking into consideration our institutional priorities, how many students we need to admit so that we can enroll our freshman class, and then that's how decisions kind of come down to us at our level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, as you say, the application will be classified demographically. So may I know more about, is there any quota of accepting international students and US students or the international students who study in US?
So because this alludes to what Ken talked about before with institutions having priorities and certain pools they want to fill, and some majors heavier than others, but geographically speaking, what are the quotas, or are there quotas for domestic, international studying domestically? Take it away.
Sure. So at BC, we are conscientious of how many international students we're accepting and enrolling to the university. And in recent years, we've become more thoughtful about the makeup of that pool, in that we receive most of our international applicants from students from China and Korea. But we want to make sure that the students we're enrolling, we also get students from Europe, from South America, from all kinds of different parts of the world in that population. Some years, and I don't actually know how this is determined, but for us, sometimes that is really just international students who are coming from their home country. We rarely include international students who are attending schools here in the States in that configuration. But I'm not part of the international team, and sometimes they look at that a little bit differently. But typically that's just for students coming from other countries, but that's gonna be really institution specific.
I think quota is not the right term. I think goal.
Yeah.
So we have goals. So for me, as Dean of Admission, I have 85 goals that they want us to hit. Now, my wife will tell you I fail all the time, and I fail every year. I do not hit all 85. If I can hit 60, 65, 70, then we're doing pretty well. 75 is a banner year. 50 or under 50, I'm probably not sitting here the next year. So, so we have goals, but the goals are often helping us drive some of our recruitment decisions, where we travel, where we invest our marketing resources through this whole thing, and it's less on the decision-making side, I would say. I mean, because, look, whatever goals we have, certainly that may be impacted a little bit within some of our admission decisions, but the goals that we have is, and our ability to achieve them is driven by the strength of the applicant pool. And if the applicant pool is not there, and it's not strong enough, then we're not gonna hit that goal. Because we're not gonna admit students that are not gonna be successful and are not prepared academically for the rigor they're gonna experience at our institution.
Eric and Michelle? Good? Okay, great. Well, we really appreciate them coming. I'd like to give them a hand, please.
We're gonna take about a 5-minute break and then we're gonna jump into next portion of our programming. So.
Great job.
Thank you.
Real specific.
That's what we want.
Okay. So as we finished up talking about our goals for the College Counseling Office, we're gonna move a little bit into the timeline. So when your students came back from the Thanksgiving break, we moved right into what we call College 101, which is the leadership component of the college curriculum that we do with them. So it's a 10-week program that we do within the leadership class, and it runs throughout the winter term. So just about every single lesson that we do during the winter term revolves around something related to the college process. So in your folder, you'll see the syllabus that we use for the College 101 curriculum. It really is more of a soup to nuts program that's designed to specifically move students through the various aspects of the college process. So far, we spent this past week going over, hopefully you've heard them talk about this new science survey that we had them do. So in the beginning of the fall term, we had them take over time about a 2-hour survey that looked a lot at their aptitudes and their interests. And then we put it aside for a while, and then we came back to it this week, and they looked at it individually with their own results, sort of looking at where aptitudes emerge for them, where are some of their interest levels. And the goal is for them to start thinking about what is it that they're interested in. You know, we're talking about sometimes they have no idea what they're interested in, and that's perfectly fine, but this will hopefully get them thinking about other areas. And what we really liked about this youth science survey was that it was really in-depth, and it was focusing more on introducing them to some careers that were more out of the box, not just sort of the strict basic ones. It's allowing them to sort of navigate some different things that might be of interest to them. So we did some of that, and it also will help them think about some possible major choices. Again, helping them think about some things that they might not already know about. Other topics within this 10-week curriculum will be using SCORE with them. So we'll have a little introduction this morning with you, but we will really go into depth with them being able to use that. We'll talk about standardized testing. We'll spend a lot of time defining fit. We've had some beginning conversations about what fit means. We'll talk about self-advocacy and how they really need to be running this process. They will create a personal resume. They'll write their own personal recommendation, just to kind of get a sense of where they're really thinking about who they are as a person. We'll be a mock interview committee. So really is very much hands-on with the college process. And again, the syllabus is in your folder. As the winter term continues, we'll start creating a testing plan with your child. So many students took the SAT last week, and I did see some friendly faces there when I was registering them for the ACT this morning. So I know it's not good times, but we do like them to have a baseline for each test. And at that point, once the scores come back, we will sit with your son or daughter and really look at those two scores and try to figure out what might be the best test for them. They are two very different style tests. So we will analyze and look at the scores for both. We use a concordance table to sort of match up the two different scores. If your son or daughter comes in where they're both about the same, we usually ask them at that point which test feels more comfortable for them. Obviously the ACT is a bit more fast-paced, that might not feel as good for them, and the SAT is a little bit of, each testing section is a little longer, that might be preferable, yes.
So we've been getting some messages about test prep and signing up for the class. Will this timing work out so that they pick the test before we have to sign up?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes, that will work out perfectly.
Thank you.
And yes, and that test prep, we'll talk about that in a little bit too, but that test prep will align for the spring tests that are coming for both SAT and ACT. Yep. In January, after your son or daughter has completed their junior survey, we'll give that to them before they leave next week. After they complete their junior survey, that's when they set up their first individual meeting with their college counselor. Also at that time, we will send home a parent survey to you so that we can start to understand what is important to you. If you have some parameters that you have that are important, oftentimes we like to hear from you if you have restrictions or thoughts about geographic location. That tends to be one of the biggest ones we hear about. Students will say to us, oh yeah, I definitely want to go to the West Coast. And the parent might say, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. And just like we were saying earlier and hearing from the admission panel, the more you can have those conversations up front with your son or daughter, the better it is. There's nothing more heartbreaking than having a student apply to a school out on the West Coast and then getting in, having their heart set on going, and then the parents saying, you know what, it's just not gonna happen. So while the conversations might feel challenging, even right now, it still is better to have them up front. The second meeting, we'll begin to explore initial thoughts around the college criteria, thoughts about size, location, interest, sort of the school culture, financial considerations. We still want to make sure that we're having a range of schools on the list as we begin to develop with them. Well, and then with your parent survey, we'll sort of be sharing those thoughts with your child as well, so that when we're talking about creating this list, we have everybody's input at the same time. And from this point, then we'll begin to build that preliminary list. We try to have that done with them before they leave for March break, so that if you do want to use that 3-week time period to visit some schools, we try to have a little bit of a sense so that they have an opportunity to think about where they might want to visit over that break, if that works for your schedule. And then finally, we'll finish with a field trip in February. We usually try to, on one Thursday afternoon, take a group of students to visit a larger college or university, and then we also have one that's more on the smaller side. Oftentimes, students come in saying they have a sense as to which size school they're already thinking about, and for this particular field trip, we try to encourage them to see the opposite. So if they're thinking they want to go to a large college or university, we usually encourage them, we don't force them, but we encourage them to visit the smaller school so that they can see if that is something they might like, and vice versa. Again, we don't force them to do that, but it is kind of good if they're already thinking that they want large, we would kind of want to get them on a smaller campus just to be sure. So that is at the end of February. We like to do this with them also before they go away in March for break, so that they use it as almost like a little test visit with us. They will have an information session at the school. We will go on a campus tour. So they'll have the opportunity to ask questions in the admissions office. They'll have the opportunity to ask questions on the tour. So we prep them for that before, about what are some good questions to ask, what are some things you're wondering about, so that when they do go away for March break, they'll have some ideas ready to share and ask questions along that tour. All right, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Okay, so Kelly just talked a little bit about March break. So when you're thinking about, make sure I'm going through, yep. Okay, so when you're thinking about visits for March break, this is a great time. Obviously, we have an extended period of time away from school. Just some things to consider as you're scheduling those visits. Some of that time during March break can also be the college's time on spring break. Seeing colleges when students are in session is usually great, but if it doesn't work out that way, it's still great to get on some college campuses during the time when we have off from school. So during the spring of junior year, that March break is a good time for some possible college visits. In April, we are a part of a Hartford Area Independent School group of college counselors, and in April we host a big college fair for all juniors in those schools. So we will bus our entire junior class to Avon Old Farms this year on the 14th of April, and they will participate in a college fair with over 150 college representatives from all over. And this is the first time that your children are going to be able to interface with college admission reps kind of individually. So we prep them in leadership to what kinds of questions to ask, what's it going to be like. But these are the people that will be reading their applications for the most part. There's no other representatives allowed at this fair, and it only can be admissions professionals. So these are the people who know what they're doing and know what they're talking about. So it's a great event. In the spring, we will have obviously parent meetings during Parents' Weekend. If that doesn't work for your schedules with us, we can certainly schedule time outside of that weekend, but that is a time where you will be automatically scheduled to meet with your children's college counselor during that Parents' Weekend. We will meet with your student or your children for senior course selection in the spring as well. So again, going back to that, finding, the individuality of these students, figuring out what your plan is, what the student's plan is for senior year, what courses they might be interested in, As Anne mentioned earlier, this might be the first time they get to take elective courses that really interest them, they get to choose. And so kind of building their profile based on their courses. They will be asking teachers for recommendations in the spring. They already know this, they've been prepped this going into junior year, so obviously they are their best selves in all of their classes all the time. But they do know that they will be asking teachers for recommendations at the end of the year. And then continuing with standardized testing, obviously we'll have some spring tests that are offered and test prep classes in the spring as well. So at the end of junior year, we talk a lot about the essay because they will be sent home with a homework assignment over the summer. In leadership, we do some essay brainstorming and some free writing to get them kind of ready to start with their college essay. And then it will be that summer assignment. And then with the kind of initial test results from these most recent tests and the spring tests, and then with a more formal GPA at the end of junior year, we'll start to put together a more specific list of reach, possible, and likelies, those possible expected outcomes on the college list to send home for the summer so that students can continue college visits with that in mind. It is still a work in progress, that list at this point, and it will continue to be a work in progress over the summer of junior year because a lot of those visits will continue through the summer, and they should. Not all schools offer interviews, but if they do, the summer is a great time to be on those college campuses and do those interviews if offered and if appropriate. Test prep can continue throughout the summer for some students. A lot of our seniors take their final test in the fall of their senior year. So it still kind of is a continual process for some. It may not be for your children specifically, but obviously we'll work with each student to figure out their plan. The work on college essays, that is the requirement to come back for senior day. And I'll talk a little bit about senior day, but and then return to school with a refined and balanced college list. So those expected outcomes come in handy as you're visiting schools over the summer. So students arrive back to senior day early. It's a great day. It's a lot of college counseling programming. Maybe it's the best part for us, but maybe not for them. But we throw a lot of information at them in that first day, just to kind of welcome them back into their process. We talk about their essay assignment. We do nuts and bolts about what to expect and what's going to come at them in the following months. And then we have a nice dinner with the seniors and the faculty, and it's just a great way to kind of kick off their senior year. We also, in those first couple of meetings when we're back on campus, are sharing feedback from the summer, from visits, where the list is right now. Again, it's refining and changing, and it's a fluid college list, even up through, the fall, and applying. So we just keep in constant communication with each student as we move through the senior fall. Again, taking standardized testing when necessary, not always a requirement for all students, but many of our seniors will take testing in the fall. We continue with essays and supplements. That becomes a bulk of what we do in the fall of senior year, and students will be meeting with us regularly to review those pieces of writing that will be required from some of the colleges that they apply to. The financial aid application process becomes available to start October 1st, so that's a piece of the puzzle starting in the middle of the fall term as well. And we sit with all of our students to submit applications. We have little bells in our office. Pick up wrong every time someone submits something. We'd love to hear the bell resonating through the office. It's a lot of fun. It's nerve-wracking, but it's fun. And they put a lot of effort into these applications, and it's so great to see it kind of come to fruition and hit that submit button and see the confetti come on the screen. So then senior spring, we're really going fast forward here. Students are receiving decisions, as Anne said, kind of now through April. May 1st is that National Candidates Reply Date, is where all students have to make a decision on where they will be attending. Obviously, waiting is the hardest part sometimes, right? They do all the work to get those applications in, and they kind of leave it up to the admissions gods to make those decisions. Then graduation, May 28th, 2021. You guys ready?
And it's interesting to see students through the process, the next, 2 years, there'll be times when they are ready to go, they wanna graduate, they want it all done, and then there are times when they just don't want it to end, they wanna be here forever. So by May 28th, they'll be ready to go. But it's our hope that we help them through their process and get there, so.
So the last important slide of our presentation this morning is really talking about the relationship, and I alluded to this earlier. Student-driven process, but we're not gonna let them totally fail. They might experience failure, but they're all gonna go to college. They're all gonna go to a great college. It's gonna be wonderful. They're gonna be supported by the parents and the college counselors in really important ways. And we're gonna split into small groups in just a minute so that you can start working and hear and get comfortable with your son or daughter's college counselor, and we're gonna do some activities together there as well. Before we do that, I'm gonna move and make sure this. We actually, as Kelly's pulling up SCORE for us, so for those of you who've worked with us before, we've used Naviance, which is an online college database management system. It's been increasingly frustrating. Their technology hasn't worked very well, so we always want the best and the newest thing for our students, and we have determined that SCORE is definitely that for us. So you will love it. It is much more user-friendly than Naviance. It is actually got all the same capabilities if you were used to that, so no panicking there. I know, like Mr. Kincaid talking about, he's like, this is my third kid, don't change it on me. But so I'm gonna show you 2 short videos that will give you a brief overview, and we will be emailing you logins and things like that. We are not rolling this out with the students until January, and so you don't have to worry about it until January either. But since you're here, I want to show it to you and make sure we're all feeling comfortable with that. How are we doing,
Like right
Kelly?
here, is this the one?
That looks good.
Okay.
And then just scroll down a little bit. Well, a little further down.
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
This one.
Yep.
Okay, I remember.
There we go.
Well, it's great so far.
To research colleges and students lists. Hi, and welcome to SCORE.
There we go.
In this video, we'll show you how parents can use SCORE to research colleges and add them to their
People have
students
your
lists,
own logins.
calculate school costs, answer surveys, and communicate with school counselors. When you first log in as a parent, you'll be taken to your dashboard. Here's where you'll have insight onto your personal college search. You'll be able to see trending colleges and colleges that have been suggested to you based on your personal interests as well as your academic interests. You also have all the students currently associated with your profile, any messages, notifications, and if you have any surveys assigned to you, you can complete them from up here. Also from the dashboard, you'll be able to see the cost calculator, information on current surveys assigned to you, as well as helpful links. The cost calculator is a way for you to do an updated price estimate for the cost of tuition. Here you'll be able to either use the average net price of school, an income-based net price, or if you'd like to enter some financial information, you'll be able to see a custom price estimate for each school. From your profile, you'll also have quick access to surveys that have been assigned to you, so you can fill those out here. When it comes time to do a college search, you'll notice that we have 2 types of search. We have a preference search and an advanced search. Preference search gives you the ability to search based off of preferences. You can also see your students' preferences here. The advanced search lets you search based off of a number of different aspects of the college profile. You'll notice that you can easily suggest schools to your student, and if you'd like a more detailed view of the college, you can click on the college name to see the school profile. Here we provide virtual campus tours by UVisit. We have statistical information on the school. We've got videos by students for prospective students provided by Campus Reel, as well as academic information and cost and financial aid information. By clicking on the wall, you'll be able to see a social feed from the school based off of different activities and clubs at that school and current students at that school. This concludes the introduction of the SCORE platform for parents. For more information or to create your own SCORE account, you can go to score.com and click sign up.
Okay, we're gonna show you the student one as well, just so you get a sense of what they're looking at. But the nice thing about SCORE is that it is the same view for counselor, parent, and student. You might not appreciate that, but trust me, I do.
The same link though, right? Same link. Yeah.
Here, students can search for a college, view the status of their applications, review upcoming visits and deadlines, and browse college carousels of recommendations suggested by SCORE. The student profile is where students can manage all of their personal and academic information, access their career profile, and manage their college preferences and document storage. The personal details section is host to a student's contact information, email addresses, linked parents, and application IDs. The academic overview is where students can add and edit test scores and GPA if enabled in your high school settings. Activities and achievements give students a place to record their extracurriculars such as work experience and athletics. And the Student Drive allows students, parents, and counselors to upload files and links to a student's document storage. SCORE has partnered with career aptitude and assessment platform UScience to provide career assessments to all SCORE students. The UScience assessment takes around 2 hours to complete and does not have to be completed in a single sitting. Once a student has completed the UScience assessment, there will be a waiting period of around 12 to 24 hours for UScience to generate their results. Once the results are available, students can favorite careers based on
Just so everybody knows, our students have already completed their youth science. We did that in the fall term of leadership, and we're just starting to dig into it now. So you don't need to ask them to find 2 hours to do it. We already provided them with that.
on the results of their assessment. These favorited careers will be reflected on the career profile tile of the student profile when they return to SCORE. The last section of the student profile is where students can set their college preferences. College preferences allow students to specify qualities that characterize their ideal college and is broken into 3 distinct columns: must-have, nice-to-have, and no thanks. Criteria in the must-have column is marked as a requirement. Colleges missing a student's must-have criteria will not appear in their preference search results. Criteria in the nice-to-have column prioritizes their preference search results. Schools that match a greater percent of a student's nice-to-have criteria will be displayed above schools that are missing nice-to-have criteria in preference search. Criteria in the no thanks column causes schools including any no thanks criteria to be deprioritized to the bottom of their preference search results. When a student lands on the college search page, they'll immediately be presented with their preference search results based on their college preferences. If they'd like to conduct a search outside of their preferences, they can go to the Advanced Search tab. Here they'll be presented with a complete search experience with the ability to edit filters based on personal interests, academic focus, athletics, acceptance rates, and more. Students can search privately by enabling the private search toggle at the top of the page. This allows students to search without visibility to their parents or counselors. If a student finds a college they'd like to follow, they can do so by clicking the My Colleges button on the college's tile. To view more information on a college, click a college's name to view its college details page. A college's details page contains all the information available for a college on SCORE and is broken into 3 main sections: Overview, Wall, and Analysis. The College Details Overview section contains admissions information, including application requirements and deadlines, student life details, academic statistics and a list of majors, cost and financial aid data, and location and transportation information. SCORE's data comes primarily from iPads and the college scorecard to ensure that it is accurate and up to date. The College Wall is where students can browse all the content SCORE has curated for a college, including clubs, activities, and athletics. Each college note includes a hashtag to help students find similar interests at different schools, as well as links to social media and official websites. Finally, the Analysis tab is where students can view scattergrams for a college. Scattergrams visually depict historical admissions decisions using previous students' GPAs and standardized test scores. As a general disclaimer, scattergrams are only intended to provide a guidepost to gauge acceptance likelihood and are not intended to be a definitive predictor of admission. Clicking the My Colleges button will add a college to the following column, of the students' My Colleges list. My Colleges is the last key area of SCORE and is where students can manage their college applications. It is broken into 3 main columns: following, applying, and applied. The following column serves as a central list of colleges students are interested in. They can add colleges to this list from many places throughout SCORE, or they can add one directly by clicking the Add a College button at the top of the column and searching for the college they wish to add. Once a college is in their My Colleges list, they can set its acceptance likelihood by clicking Set Acceptance Likelihood and selecting a level. If a student has decided they are ready to apply, they can drag a tile from the Following to the Applying column, or open the card's expanded view and click Mark as Applying. SCORE provides functionality to enable greater counselor control over actions taken in the Applying and Applied columns, which we will cover later in the application process course. When a student moves a college to Applying, they'll be prompted to provide some information such as application type and method. Colleges in Applying offer more information on their selected application type and the status of their documents. And students can use college checklists to keep track of their application requirements. Once a student has completed their application and has applied to college, they're now ready to move the college into the Applied column and provide a few additional details. The college's application status will now be in a pending state as they await their admissions decision. My Colleges is also home to 2 additional columns: Suggested and Not Interested. The Suggested column will only display if students have outstanding suggestions from their parents or counselor. The Not Interested column is where students can move colleges they are no longer interested in from the Following, Applying, and Suggested columns. Students can request recommendations directly within the My Colleges tab. They'll be asked to specify a teacher, signify whether the recommendation is for a specific college, and provide a subject and message.
This is going into a lot of detail, and you don't need to absorb it all now. We just want to give you kind of a sense of all the functions, but I can promise you that they will not be in charge of requesting or their recommendations. I mean, they will be, but the teachers will still turn them into us first, and we will approve them and make sure they get to the right colleges at the right time. We're not gonna, we want them to fail, but we don't really want them to fail.
Once a recommendation has been sent, students can view its status by clicking View Request Status. If the request hasn't yet been acted upon by a teacher, they can revoke the request by clicking Cancel. Students can also view and register for upcoming visits by going to the Visits and Deadlines page. SCORE's messaging feature allows students to communicate directly with counselors and parents. That concludes our overview of the SCORE student application, covering major features and functionality.
So you can see we're very excited about this. I think it's going to be great. We will send you a lot of information and help you at any point in time get comfortable with it. We just love what we do, and we're talking so much. We're running really behind, and I apologize for that. We are going to break into small groups right now. On your agenda, it tells you, on your folder, it tells you, reminds you who your son or daughter's college counselor is. And then on the agenda, there's a room number. Actually, and I'll just read them out loud real quick. So with Kate Bashaw, you're staying on this floor in 413. If with Kelly Tassone, you're staying right here in this room, which is good or bad, depending on how stir-crazy you're getting. Working with me, we're going downstairs to 305. Kareem Newland's group is going to 302, and Matthew Favor's group is going to 311. All right, and then we'll come back here. I know.
much more theoretical,
They just base it on what they need, you don't really get a choice. Thank you. Hi, how are you? That's right, that's right. I know, it's fun because we see people like that onside interview and they can't emerge.
I just wish I would've gotten
You
saved.
know, the next phase, yeah. Kate seems like she's having a great
Yeah,
time. She is like that. She's the happiest girl. Everybody wants to see her all the time. She's just lovely. So feel like her falling. Just like, so I'm so happy for her. Yeah, yeah, it does seem to be a great fit for her. Squash today, oh fun, fun. That's great though.
Ready?
Yeah, where you go and give it a try and yeah, nice little team. Yeah, it's good.
All right, welcome back.
Right?
So I think we're going to go ahead and get started on the next part of our discussion. So right now we're going to begin our student panel, and you get to hear from our seniors, and they represent a wide range of backgrounds and experiences within the college process. And I think there's no better people to kind of explain to you what it's like to be a student in the process than those that are currently going through it. So what I'll do is I'll start off with Varsity, and I'll ask each of our students to tell them a little bit about themselves and what they've been doing here over the past 4 years. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Vartika. I'm a four-year day student from West Springfield, Massachusetts. Here at Suffield, I am a yearbook leader and I am an acting class teaching assistant.
Hi, my name is Tommaso. I'm a four-year senior from Suffield. Here I like to participate in the performing arts. I'm a dancer, I'm in the musical here right now, and I'm also a member of the disciplinary committee.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm a four-year boarder from Westboro, Massachusetts. I'm a proctor in Barnstorm. I'm on disciplinary committee as well. I'm also currently in the musical, and I was a captain of the varsity hockey team.
Hi, my name is Amanda. I'm a three-year senior from Hopkinton, Mass. I'm a proctor in the Athena Fuller dorm. I'm captain of the varsity swimming team. I also play field hockey in the fall and water polo in the spring.
Hi, my name is Marco Saccaroli. I'm a three-year senior from Milford, Connecticut. Currently at Suffield, I was a captain of the water polo team, and I'm currently captain of the swim team right now.
Cool. So we're going to start off with Allie. When we think about this idea of fit, we talk to our students a lot about fit. What criteria
were you looking for in a college when you start the process, and has that changed, or how has it changed now that you're about to finish up your application?
Yeah, so honestly, when I started the process, I didn't have any school in mind. I didn't really have any name of a school. I didn't really know what I was looking for. So when I originally went about my list, I really listened to the input of my advisor, my college counselor, and I knew that I wanted a school that had a really good music scene, and I knew that I wanted a really good environment, so either a city or a place where there's a really good kind of music venue that I could be part of. And I also knew that I wanted a great community, and those were kind of the two things I was looking for. So when I went about my college visits, I made sure that I visited a small liberal arts school as well as a bigger university, and I tried to vary visiting cities with rural areas as well. And I just realized throughout the process that I didn't have, I'm a pretty open-minded person, and I think I could make the best of anywhere that I end up at. So I didn't really have one specific school in mind, and I think that's honestly helped me a lot because I feel like going into this, you need to be as open-minded as possible, and you have to have, good expectations going into it. So now I feel like my list is in a good spot, and I've applied to a lot of, a wide variety of schools that offer what I was looking for originally. So yeah.
Anybody else?
So throughout the college process, I knew beforehand I wanted to swim in college, and I didn't really know where or specifically what division, but I knew I wanted to swim. So I varied from big schools to about 10,000 to small schools about 1,000 or 2,000. And as I went on through the year, from the end of junior year through summer to the beginning of senior year, my list changed completely. I knew that I wanted to swim, but I didn't really have specifics of like what I wanted to study. And right now, I just got through the college process actually. I just finished, I recently committed to Providence for swimming. And I'm still undecided, which isn't a bad thing, I think. And I think from the beginning to the end, I didn't have a specific, I didn't really know. And now I know, which is very happy and very, very good. But it changes a lot, and that's not a bad thing.
So I didn't really know where I wanted to go to college, and I didn't really have any names in mind. I just knew that I wanted a big city because living in Suffield my whole life, kind of a really small town, so I wanted to get out there and experience Boston or New York or something like that. So I kind of just limited my search to just big city, diverse population because I value that a lot. And I just trusted my college counselor, and I got a nice list, and I weeded some things out as to what I liked. For me, learning languages is really important. So I wanted to find schools that have a broad program, international relations and all that. And also I like to dance, so I wanted a school with nice performing arts. And the college counselors really help you figure everything out. I have always been the type of person that I'm not really that involved in the college search process. So for my college counselor to kind of step in and help me out was really, really helpful, and they're really good with that.
So the next question I'll start off with Vartika. What research tools did you use in the process, and what were some of the ones that were most valuable to you? And are there any specific recommendations on tools that parents and students can use in this process?
For me personally, I think just the campus visit and the college counselors were a very big help for me. And I just think it's a process where everything connects together. I started off with the school websites to see what each school entailed and if it was something that I wanted to be a part of. And then I would talk about with my parents, and then I would go to my college counselor. And it was just really nice to hear her say, oh, I think that's a perfect fit for you. And then we would delve more into that one. And then that all led up to the college visit. And then I would go there and I'd see if that's the community I wanted to be a part of or not. So I think as much as it's an individual process for me, it's also a collaborative experience with my parents and with my college counselor. And in specific, I really liked Naviance because it was specific to me and the criteria. I could put in what I wanted in a college and it would give me the output. Thought that was helpful.
For me specifically, I'm sorry. sorry. For me specifically, I, like for Tika, I went on the website a lot, but for me, what I found most important was visiting the colleges specifically, because for me, I don't really mind that much what a college has to offer. For me, it's more of the community and like the ambiance, the atmosphere of everything. I really want to feel like I belong somewhere, and the only way to get that is by really visiting the college and campus and all that.
So I think for me, the one thing that I wish that I had done differently in terms of research would have been about financial aid, because so going in, obviously the secondary school process is a bit similar to the college process. You want to do your research, you want to have everything prepared, your essays, all of that, and your applications in on time, and the fees, and you know, it's all that fun stuff. But I feel like I didn't prepare myself enough to know that the financial aid process was a bit different for college. So if you're thinking about that, you need to be prepared to be in constant communication with your kid about it and know that they need to continuously like check their emails and research what schools require what documents, because yeah, you submit things on the FAFSA and the CSS and all that, but some schools might then email you and you might not get it because it could be in your spam, and they might be saying, oh, we actually need this document. And then you might not see it until a month later, and then at that point it's like pretty late, and then you're freaking out and you need signed tax forms and all that, and it's like really confusing, and then you have to freak out at your parents. So I'd say like in terms of that, just make sure that you and your child are in good communication about that, and continuously like push them to check their email and do their research on what each school needs, because every school needs something different. So yeah.
I can also agree with that as well. I didn't really do a lot of research also about like financial services and stuff like that. I think also a lot of colleges offer like seminars and stuff about their financials specifically. So if you're looking at a specific college, that's really helpful. I think that I would also do that differently.
Cool. So then we'll transition to Marco. How many college visits did you do? Did you interview? Did you take tours? Did you have to do overnights? And what kind of influenced, I mean, obviously the swimming, but like what other things influenced your decision to then go and apply?
So when I was going through the college process, I visited a total of 5 schools, which is a lot for me. But specifically what I was looking for throughout the visits, while I was on campus, while I was going to classes, I looked for the atmosphere and if I could actually put myself in the community. And I talked to a good thing to do is talking to a lot of people at the college currently enrolled, which gives me a good sense of what they're doing and what their everyday life is like. But yeah.
I actually visited 10 schools. I value the visit and actually seeing myself in the atmosphere, like Marco said. I think that I'm also applying to a lot of different schools. I'm applying to like large schools, small schools, research universities and stuff like that. So I think the college visit is very important. It's good to see like where your child wants to be specifically, because a lot of colleges are different and offer different resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, I probably visited the same number of schools, but like I said, I varied what types of school I visited. So I went to a small liberal arts and then research kind of oriented university, because obviously not everybody can fly everywhere all over the country and visit 30 schools. That's excessive. So I think it's important to visit different types of schools, but as long as you then if your kid ends up figuring out what kind of school they like and what kind of environment they like, that's what's the most important. And then if they apply to schools that they haven't visited, that's totally fine. As long as they kind of have an idea of what kind of school they want, then they can visit after if they get accepted, or figure it out later on, or do an overnight even later. But yeah.
There was one instance this past year where I really liked a school that I did research on, but then when I went in for the visit, I actually realized that I didn't like the school and I couldn't see myself there. So I really think that, again, touring a school is really, really important just to like get the whole idea of whether or not your child can see themselves there, because even if sometimes they might like what the school offers, it might just not be a good fit sometimes.
Yeah, I visited around like 6 to 7 schools, and I also thought it was very interesting to see how a school sometimes isn't what you expected in a good or bad way. I just think it depends if you see yourself there, and sometimes you just get that feeling when you're there and you're like, I think this is a school for me, and I think that's important.
Great. And I just like to say, like, our students are great, and I mean, I think you see like the variety of students we have and the variety of different thoughts. And like the beauty of this is like we've been telling them this for the past 18 months, and they've been listening the whole time. Now if I can figure out how to do that with my 10-year-old, I'm great. So we'll start with Amanda. You don't have to give details about it, but just kind of talk about your college process and where you're currently at, and if you decide to apply, early decision.
So I'm currently in the midst of like the waiting process right now. I've applied to about 4 schools. I did not ED anywhere. I just chose that wasn't an option for me. And you don't have to ED anywhere if you don't want to. It depends on your situation. But I am waiting to hear back, and I still have 5 more schools that I'm applying to regular decision. But yeah, it's kind of an exciting waiting game right now. It's not nerve-wracking at all. It's just I'm excited to hear back soon. Yeah.
I'm in a pretty good spot. I feel like with the whole college process, I feel like the fall term is it is intense, and you feel like you expect your teachers to not give you as much homework, and you're kind of hoping that they don't, and they still do. So that part of it was frustrating because you have to balance so much. But I've submitted applications to 11 schools, going on 12 soon, and I've heard back from 2 and was accepted to 2 already, so I feel like I'm in a pretty decent spot. And I guess now I'm just waiting and hopefully keeping up with my schoolwork and all that, because you know, you don't really want to after you get accepted to college, because what's the point? But there is a point because you're still learning and it's going to help you in college. So that part of it I'm still working at, you know, slowly but surely.
For me, the hardest part about the college process is just getting the work done, because I am such a big procrastinator and there's so much work to do. Like all the schools that I was applying to had at least 2 supplemental essays. So I had to find time to balance all the schoolwork that they don't let up on, and then I had to find time to write those 2 supplements, which I'm still trying to get done. But the most important thing, I think, is that you just follow every deadline, because there are specific ED deadlines or early action deadlines that you have to follow. And also some schools have like little hidden deadlines that you don't see. If you want to apply for a scholarship, I remember I had to write an essay and submit an application for December 1st, even though the real application was for January. So if I didn't find that, then I wouldn't have made the deadline. So I think it's really important to just stay on top of everything, but it's also just like there's enough time to get everything done, pretty much.
Yeah, I would just say start early, and I think the school does a good job of that. They kind of have us start already in the summer, so I already had some of my essays and my supplements done before they even needed to be submitted, so I thought that was very helpful.
Cool. So I will start again with Tommaso, and this is, I guess this is the $1 million question. What role did your parents play in the college process? In what ways did they help you most? And is there anything you wish they'd have done differently?
So my parents grew up in Italy, and my mom didn't get to go to college, and my dad went to a public university. So I think them being in America now, they're trying to maybe live a little vicariously through me. So my dad was really pushing this college in Italy to me and my brother. My brother ended up going to this university in Milan, really good school. But I think my parents, they have this idea of where they want me to go, and they kind of push it a bit. But in some ways it's kind of aggravating to have an idea of a college pushed on you, but in another way, like, I kind of like the school now, so I can't be mad at them because but like a little part of me is still upset. But for me, my mom, she was really vocal about me kind of staying on the East Coast or Europe because she's gonna go back over to my dad in Italy when I graduate, so she didn't want me to go to the West Coast. So she had like a pretty big role in where I wanted to go because I was more focused on the school itself, not the location, but then she kind of put like a damper on where the location could be. But that was fine. But I think a parent's role should be in supporting their child in finding their college and kind of letting them have the first say of where they want to go and what they want to pursue. And I think my parents were really good with that.
So my parents come from totally different backgrounds in terms of their schooling. So my mom went to William & Mary for undergrad and grad, but then my dad did ROTC to pay his way through college. So they kind of have very different understandings of education and how they both got there. It's very different for them. So, but one thing they have in common that was really nice for me is that they trusted the college counseling services here. That's the main reason, I mean, I feel like for most of us, one of the main reasons is that we're helped so much by the people that work here. And my parents are both busy, they both work. They don't have a lot of time to just keep like telling me what I should be doing. And so they put their faith in the college counseling program here. And it definitely ended up working out very well. And I think for me, I don't do well when somebody's telling me what to do, especially my parents. I don't particularly appreciate that. And so it wouldn't have, that wouldn't have worked out in anybody's favor. So I'm really glad that my parents both trusted me and trusted my counselor, and I think that's always the right way to go about it, because if you're pushing your kid and constantly pushing them, they're probably going to become combative or what, for most of us anyways. So I think that was the best way that my parents could have done it.
Hopefully that sounds a little familiar, right?
So both my parents grew up in Uganda and went to school in Uganda. So when they first came here, they had no idea about any of the school process or anything. So when I was first applying to schools and like looking at what schools I wanted to apply to, I had no idea what I was doing, and I can definitely say I put a lot of my trust in my college counselor, which really helped me out. She literally helped me with creating my list and then going and applying and visiting, which really was helpful. But my mom, she definitely lived vicariously through me. She really was pushing a lot of the schools like Harvard, which is not really for me, but that was her goal. But I think that like now I can say that she's kind of taken a backseat position, which really helped me like sort of see, okay, now I need to be more responsible. It's also helping them become more responsible and realizing it's setting them up for a really good college career. So now they're realizing, okay, now I have to do my own work. I have to be on top of my supplements and my deadlines. It really helped me out and figure out that I am now going to be like an adult and I'm growing up now. So I think with my mom taking that backseat position, it helped me a lot too. And I can say I've grown a lot through this process.
So personally, it was pretty easy towards the end of junior year to decide what I wanted to do, since I specifically wanted to swim in college. And one of the biggest things for me over the summer and all throughout the summer for any athletes or potential athletes is to keep in touch with coaches. And all through the summer, I was continuously going from college to college, sending them my times, giving them all my information, academic stuff like transcripts, but I continuously had to be talking to coaches, and even if they wouldn't respond, follow up and keep pushing for it. But personally, my mom was the best help I've had in the college process, I think. And she's a very hands-on person. She likes to know what I'm doing, where I'm at with deadlines or applications, supplements. And I think one piece of advice for parents in this student perspective is to not totally be after them, like sending text after text, call after call. I know it's a natural thing, but it is very stressful, and this is one of like the most stressful times in our lives. But overall, I think creating deadlines before those real deadlines are due, helps a lot. And getting a first rough draft way before anything is due and looking at it, going through it as many times as possible was the best thing for me.
I just thought it was very interesting to see how much my parents changed through the college process as well, because they both went to college in India. So coming here, everything was very about statistics for them and numbers. And in the beginning, like my first college visit was Princeton, and they were like, make that your dream, like your top choice. And for me, that just wasn't really what I wanted. So it's like I had to make them understand what I wanted, and it wasn't about what they wanted at the time, even though there is some of that too. And I'm at a point now where they just want me to be happy, and everything's more about the fit and the holistic review of the entire college and not just the numbers and the stats.
So, last question before we get into Q&A. If you could leave them with the parents here with one bit of advice to best support their students as they go on in this college process, what would that advice be?
I would say let your child explore for themselves and just support them and be understanding for their needs and what they think that they want right now.
Going along with that, I would say that in a child's life, there's not much that they can choose, but for them, this is, like the college process is maybe the first thing that they really have a choice in a say on, so I think it's really important for them to kind of be the leading force.
I would say it's best not to get hung up on the name of a school, and I think that you should caution your kid not to put all of their energy and time and invest all of their self-worth into one school, because that can often end badly. And I think there are so many amazing options out there. I mean, there are so many schools that offer the same things, and you don't know which one is right for you until you get accepted and until you go there. So I think to not get hung up on the name of a school and to not push for a school because of its statistics or because of its name is probably the most important thing, because you don't know what's going to be the best fit for your kid. And the name of the school isn't what's going to make them successful.
I would say keeping an open mind through the entire process, from the beginning to picking your schools to being accepted and going on those accepted college visits as well. I think an open mind is the biggest thing. Also, just listening to your child and like hearing what they have to say and like considering it very a lot would be the best thing.
I think the most important thing that helped me out through this process was having support and encouragement from my college counselor and from my parents. It's a really big thing to have confidence going into the college process and knowing that it's going to be very overwhelming and stressful, but you can do it, and having people there to support you through it is something very, very big.
So, how much time do we have?
Maybe just take a couple of questions.
Cool. So, a couple of questions from the parents. Why not?
Steer us all on. Back it down.
That was a purpose. All right. Well, let's just give our panelists a round of applause.
Thank you so very much. You can see we're very proud of these seniors and all of their classmates. The class of 2020 has done a great job with their college search process and leading the way, and we're extremely proud and excited about their futures. Thank you, Kareem. I apologize that we ran so late today and that we got rushed into the small group meetings. It was my fault because I talked too much and I hadn't practiced out my speech. I think I got more emotional and more verbose than I had planned on, so it is all my fault, and I apologize for that. But the ending message I want to leave with all of you is that we are always here. We don't need to cram this into one morning. This is what we live and breathe every day, is college counseling and working with your children and helping them figure out what's the next best step for them. So today is just a start. We are going to wrap up the formal program now. There's lunch available for all of you. All of us will stay, and we're going to be starting our financing program in just about 10 minutes. So if you're staying for that, I know we've done a lot of sitting and talking today, but it is a really helpful seminar. We will have parents from younger grades joining us, so if you're wondering why there might be some new people coming in, that's what's happening there as well. Thank you all so very much for your time and attention today.